Yes, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Welcome back, everyone. So now let's start the tooling group meeting. So yeah, we're kind of like trying to keep the group alive, like we're doing so we get to meet every year, right? And when there's a collab summit, so we're getting the, trying to keep this going on. It's good. It's good. Like Wes still here, Darcy's still here. Like I think a lot of the folks that were involved there originally, like, are still around. Like, and I think there's a still right the wish to keep this going, right? Like, it's a very good collaborative place type of. Like this is how the group started at its origins. Like it was basically just Chris back in 17. So basically, he just kicked this group to kind of like get a bunch of folks that were working with developer tooling in the space together and put everyone in the same room and start having this space to collaborate and try to kind of like steer the runtime, right? Like also have make sure that their voices are being heard, right? Like that type of thing. So yeah, I remember being there. There were like Daniel from Learner was there. We had Ian from Create React App. A bunch of folks that are just like working in the ecosystem, right? Like consuming the runtime. And yeah, folks, that's a little bit Marco.
Security.
Right.
What's more important here?
I mean,
I can find it. I can also find a breakout room for people to work in.
yeah, breakout room. That'd be great. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
no, I'm trying to be helpful. We
Yeah.
have that space adjacent.
Should we go to the that's very important.
Yes, we'll be right back.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Thank you, sir.
Trying, I guess. I don't know.
Let me know if you need a better table there.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
More calm now, but thank you though. Thank you for it was distracting. Yeah, thank you. So, and I think they're gonna be better there too, right? Like they can, actually focus. So yeah. So going back a little into the intro, like the type of stuff that kind of came out of this group, like we had a few initiatives where like people are working and kind of like bringing the discussion to the group and working on things. Like I think the good examples of that are like the recursive APIs added to file system. We had the argument parser. That was a big one that we got like Ben from Yargs and like John from Commander basically working together, and they shipped the argument parser that we have today. So that is also a very good example of good work that came from the group. Also, Ben, while he's still in the group, like there was a lot of feedback on source maps work that he was shipping that is kind of coming from the group too. So yeah, basically that type of work historically, like, but yeah, as you can see also in the README there, like it's just like a place to kind of like a big umbrella to try to bring these folks together and have these conversations. So yeah, that's that quick intro said. I think I'll just go back to my place here. So that's meant to be more of a conversation than a presentation anyways. And I kind of had a small agenda that I put together here, tentative agenda. Oh, I see Michael was also on the call. It's great. Michael was also like there in Vancouver last time. So yeah, and for the quick tentative agenda here, I kind of wanted to start with just maybe just kind of this tooling wish list and maybe try to brainstorm more ideas that like, so that, can also be a place for maybe ideas to come from, or people looking in areas they want to contribute to the project. Like maybe they can look at this, either get inspiration or seek out for help with the work they're doing, that type of thing. So yeah, before that, like, did anyone wants to kind of add anything to the intro recap?
Sure.
You want to
I would love to know if anybody's actually using the argument parser.
usage? Do we have a? Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So for very simple things, yes, but it has like a pretty significant limitation where even if you're using it for something else, if a tag or an argument exists in Node, the argument parser like forcibly explodes. So like you basically can't use it if you're using like Mocha or something like that. So in very many use cases, you can't use it.
Because the args are basically being sucked up by the node.
Like Node is
Minor.
not, well, but Node is not actually like using them. So like if you're passing them to something else, Node isn't picking them up. So if you use like what is that library? Yargs,
Yeah,
it's fine.
yeah. I don't know if that's an implementation detail that we added specifically. I know that I was actually against throwing by default, which like forced it, like some folks were for it. I know Jordan Harban really was for that when we were speccing it out. Because it forces you to actually write usage and write config for your arguments. But I am surprised that it's blowing up on other args that like Node is aware of. So maybe that was added. I'd have to look at the implementation. So that may just be a bug, or it sounds like that could really prevent usage, is what you're saying, I think, right? Yeah. So that's good feedback.
Cool.
I think I bumped into some of those. So it's as well. So they are there. The advantage in being able to work with generic arguments, okay, it's very good because you will technically you could even use this to parse arguments that are coming from a different source. It's not just the argv of the current process, okay? And I think probably that distinction was added when we thought it would only work with the args of the current process. So it's like I think there is some good in keeping that throw behavior type of thing in certain cases, but probably not in the generic one. But yeah.
Yeah, the way that to give some history of how that all played out, I know Chris Hiller originally opened up the so for folks that don't know who that is, Bone Skull, if that makes more sense. Opened up the original PR, got a bunch of feedback, and sort of burnt out, I think, on the implementation. And so I took a second look at it and sort of spec'd out a design that kind of pieced things out. But I think the intention always was that the utility method parse args, I think that's how we named it, should be able to take an arbitrary array of arguments as well. So you could utilize it not just against the process argv value, right? So that should be still in it. Again, I haven't looked at the actual implementation in a while, but it is unfortunate here that there's two folks building tooling that aren't using it, and nobody else has raised their hands that is using it. So that's not good. So maybe we should do a retrospective here and do a bit of who's actually using this in the wild, because I know that Yargs is still got a ton of usage and Commander has a ton of usage. So maybe we need to take a look at that and improve that API. So
I still use Minimist, so I'm not even.
Okay.
As if I may suggest an addition or something that could be easy to build on top is a command framework, a command-based API. So because it's missing right now.
Do you mean like a usage layer on top of it?
No. So you Commander, like something like Commander, which you have
Default help and
no the comments. So you can do, I don't know, Vercel deploy or this kind, or something build, or you see those things that have the sub comments, git status, git add, this kind of pattern.
Oh, I see that. Command, yeah.
Command, yeah. Sorry, command. Sorry for the bad pronunciation.
Yeah, I guess it's super bare bones right now. So you have to handle those positional arguments and those commands yourself, right? So
Yeah, okay. Let me just to make sure we stick to the agenda here. I don't want to transform this into a parse args retrospect. And yeah, we kind of wanted to move on and also time box a little discussion on kind of a wish list. I think that's a productive thing to have too. And like, I kind of like put in a small example here, type of thing we could talk about. I know this kind of came from the group, I believe, like one of the last regular sessions we had, like I remember discussing with Eric Wendell on that one. And then eventually he kind of like either opened an issue or, and I think Antoine ended up opening a pull request, but it never really landed. Like, so I think it's kind of nice thing that's right into the group's, ballpark, like this static HTTP server. I don't know where we are with that PR. I don't know if you want to, if you have anything to add, Antoine, on that one.
Yeah, I had no recollection of it until you mentioned it. So I think it was waiting on reviews. There was a few requests for changes, which I think was addressed. I have to look it up.
Oh, look like Mateo, but then he approves. Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, I think there is a last comment here from Tobias, like in the pull request. Uh, not sure if it's following the conversation, so.
I'm going to paste it on the chat.
Yeah, so Tobias, we're talking about HTTP static server, right? Like you kind of left that last comment there. I was wondering if you want to maybe speak up.
Yeah, because rereading it, that was months.
Right, yeah. Just recovering the context. Yeah.
So I do think this is a very reasonable addition. So summarizing my thoughts on this is pretty much what NPX HTTP server gives you, right? So the ability to run an HTTP server with a single command that just serves the local directory or any directory of your choosing. And Python also has this built into it, and that was used as an argument here for why Node should have it. But Python also has a nicer command line in that way. So in Python, if you add -m, you can choose from a variety of built-in utilities, including an HTTP server. And Node currently doesn't really have that. We have a bunch of different command line switches to, you have watch, test, whatever, a bunch of command line switches to choose it between different modes. But we don't really have a concept of subcommands or built-in utilities besides node inspect, which is really an anti-pattern in my opinion. So the main question here is, do we want to have this on a case-by-case basis where we have some built-in features that you enable through some not really consistent command line interface, or in this PR, it's just a runtime API, I suppose. Or do we want to come up with, and I guess this is kind of leading into the other topic that you added to the agenda about subcommands in general. Do we want Node to have these built-in features? Yeah, as long as this is just a runtime API, I don't have a strong opinion on it, but I do think we should design our CLI very carefully.
So okay, let me say two things on this. So I am one of the people that have objected to this, to this landing, mostly on the premise that if we are going to serve files, we need to serve files according to the HTTP standard, and therefore implementing the full range of the byte ranges, content types, all the things that you would expect from serving a file. And moreover, we should really looking into doing that in a relatively high performant way, in meaning trying to be as fast as we can, which right now, for context, Node is actually pretty slow at serving files today. So it's an area where we can have massive wins. And James Nell pioneered it a little bit with the HTTP2 respond with file API, but it's just, I think, scratching the surface of what can be done on this topic. More specifically, in order to ship this, we will need to more or less provide an API for the send module from Express. Now, I'm so sorry, Wes is not here, because this is will be pretty much, which is probably the standard module, one of the standard modules for serving files in the community. So yeah, anyway, this is my take here. If we do it, we need to do it in a way that is performant enough and but at least follow all the specs, all the bits, and then performant enough. Apart from using an API versus a command line flag, whatever, I'm oblivious to the actual exposure.
Hopefully this is not too off topic. For a long time ago, I created a PR for a send file API that would just do the performance part and do as little, MIME type, etc. It would just, basically write the file out to the response, and all the header and parsing and stuff would live on a layer above that.
This is where I'm saying, if we need to serve files, we need to have the low-level mechanism that you described, plus all the MIME types, the headers, the byte ranges, all the things. It's a big feature. It's not a small feature. This is what I'm trying to. Because if you always return the full file, this can cause, I don't know. So the environment will be relatively different from what people would expect this to behave. All the other implementation follow the actual spec. So why the heck?
Does libuv actually implement send file from the Linux?
Sorry?
Does libuv implement send file, the Linux command? No, it doesn't. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would kind of disagree a little is that I don't think it needs to be performant to start. Like it can be improved on.
Yeah, as long as we implement the full thing with the content types and all the things that people would expect to, then no problem. But it means, for example, shipping MIME.
Right.
Okay, you need to. I don't remember if we shipped MIME or not. This is a question.
Right. In its current state, Antoine, is it taking care of all that? The MIME type dance, content plan?
So it has a finite list of file extensions that's mapped to MIME types. And yeah, I guess I added it as you request, but it's fairly limited.
Yeah, okay.
Very much just,
yeah, it's very much I had a project with those files and I copied it for this reason. So it's very web development oriented.
I think there's a general point here also in the command line parsing that we talked about before, that my assumption was that this API was supposed to be for, I don't know, like quickly spawning an HTTP server for testing or so, not for production use. So I also wrote in my comment, we should highlight in the documentation that it's not meant for production use. If it is, then I totally agree with Matteo that we do need all the bells and whistles there. But just like with the command line parser that we added to Node, I don't think that was the goal. The goal was to have a starting point for people who need to quickly write a CLI application, who don't want to install some NPM package to do the very basic feature that they want. So yeah, I think we need to agree on whether we want something very basic for local testing to get a quick start, or something that actually is feature complete and then has all these security features that you would expect from an HTTP server, etc. And until we have agreement on that, I don't think there's much we can. We can't really decide if we want to add it to core.
Yeah, my opinion is that we really need. I would be. My goal would be to serve the very minimum, like development only kind of use case, right? I don't think this needs to be production ready in any form, the performance. I think, but that's my point of view. If you, can get an agreement, like maybe it's easier to move forward with that specific PR. Like if everybody's kind of on board with that vision, right? We just document it properly, right? We make sure that's properly documented. Because yeah, we're very much approaching this from a, developer experience point of view, right? Just having that baked into the runtime, right? It's nicer for web development in general, right? So if we can get on board on that vision, I think that kind of unblocked the path here. But do we have consensus or the disagreement is yeah.
Oh,
I'd like a really quick mic. I just wanted to point out send file does exist in libview as of 1.7.
thank you. So yeah, I don't know if this is what Antoine was touching on, but one of the like extremely annoying things, I'm sure there was a good reason, but it's so annoying I don't care. With many web things, is like you have to run them on HTTP. You can't do it from a file. So it's like I just need an HTTP server to save this file so that the browser will like shut up and let me do it. So if we had something that just like made that go away, I'm sure lots of people would be happy crying.
Yeah, and by the way, currently when I need that, I'm gonna spin up Dino or Python because it just does the job then.
Well, again, not needing another runtime to do that is kind of like very convenient. Yes, I think we can all agree. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a topic we can come back to. Like we can follow up async, right? Like, but I mean, if we don't have any disagreement, right? Like if there's no one requesting change on the PR, I think we should very much move forward with it. Yeah. But the original idea here, kind of like, I think we still have at least like 6 minutes here. If anyone else has more of these types of ideas, like want to kind of just contribute to, this crowdsourced wish list for more developer experience features to add to the runtime, right? We can, yeah. Yeah. You can give. Yeah. But at the same time, like, yeah, if no one else has any ideas, yeah, we can move on to the next topic. Like, I just wanted to make sure, open the room, see if there's more people has any other ideas they want to share before moving on to the next topic here.
Yagis from the Q&A asks, is there a champion interested in pursuing this further? I'm supposing, oh, that was the answer. Like I think that was supposed to be talking about the file server command.
Right, yeah, Yagis for the static server, Antoine has been championing it. I think Eric Wanda was also involved in that original idea, right? Like, so yeah, and I think that PR should be in a landable state, right? Like so.
So it looks like there are some failing tests, but yeah, I can address those. I guess this PR currently is only adding a method in HTTP, like a utility function. And I removed the CLI shortcut, which might be what Joey was talking about. Because I don't think we have consensus on what that should look like.
Right, I see. It could be even more convenient if we have something that is more of a shortcut directly on the CLI, yes. But I think it gets kind of like the job done right now, the current PR, right? Like, but I think, yes, we can very much iteratively work on it, right? Like land this and then maybe a more handy CLI shortcut to do that, to just spawn that same syntax there. Yeah. So anyone else any other ideas that you'd like to share or anything you want to just bring to the group? Not, okay. Then I'd like to move on to topic I had here for the agenda for talking about subcommands in general and the current node run pull request. So hopefully like because this is what this tooling has this group has been very good at, like it's kind of like promoting these discussions, it's kind of fast forwarding them, right? So that we don't need to be all async waiting on you know, a day or two for the other person to reply on pull request, right? Like we especially being in person also like helps with that. And this time around, I think we have a pretty good also remote experience here. So hopefully folks that are joining from the streaming can also contribute, right? Like make your point. If you also want to say something, just raise your hand. We'll try to get also to the folks who are online. But yeah, that's it. Yes. I would like to kind of actually just start from the subcommand, like general topic, right? Like see what is the sentiment, like before jumping into node run, but we could also do the other way around, like so I don't know, maybe I think Yagis is on the call, like maybe Yagis kind of like want to contribute here, help us out what to start with, like what is the most valuable thing here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you. I'm so sorry to not be there this year. So to summarize, I opened the PR called Node Run, but instead of Node dash dash run, I opened the PR as Node Run. This Node Run, for those who doesn't know, is like npm run equivalent command that you can run without npm. It is 30 millisecond versus npm runs 200 millisecond. This is a toll that you have to pay for every time you run, and if your command takes more than 2 seconds, then 200 millisecond is not worth noticing. But for small one-time and fast commands, it's extremely noticeable. On top of that, there were some discussions around whether we should enable it as dash dash run or run, because mostly we don't implement subcommands in a more widely used fashion, meaning we have several commands like node debug and node inspect, as far as I know. But other than that, we don't have any other subcommands. And node dash dash run versus node run is a really good UX in my honest opinion, and I wanted to pursue this further. That's why I opened the PR as node run, and then because of some several blocks, I opened another pull request for only reserving the keyword run, because that's the semantic versioning change, and version 22 is on our doorstep, and I wanted to make this breaking change before we release version 22.
Right. And from your point of view, what do you think, like, is there a way forward if we just go with dash dash run, like to kind of just punt a little on the subcommand conversation? How do you see that?
So there was several concerns about how we should create a subcommand policy that I agree, and we shouldn't act on case by case basis. But this doesn't also, in my opinion, this doesn't also mean that we should block it right now. I think having a dash dash on every subcommand and having it as a CLI argument is bad for user experience, and I think we should land it.
Sure.
So may I add something?
Yes, sure.
So I 100% agree with that. This feature needs to be well designed, as it might break a few things, and also it should be a pattern for the future if we adopt that. And I don't think we will be able to find a good solution until the day we release Node.js 2022. Also, Node.js 2022 will be a LTS line. I strongly believe a feature like that should ship in a non-LTS release first. Then once it's well designed, we bump it to a Node.js LTS release line.
Right, and you're talking about the subcommand pattern, right?
Exactly.
Right. So, yeah.
Can I share something? So I think that what we can do in an LTS line that doesn't break anything, but also show our stance towards adding subcommands, is to disallow running Node CLI without any extensions. And if we disallow it, then we easily reserve every subcommand and also make our stance towards ESM. And having an extension makes it extremely easy to both performance-wise, because you don't need to search for package JSON and find type, module, and type common JSON in order to differentiate common JSON and ESM. And on top of that, it comes with a really great gift of having subcommands reserved.
Sorry, I just want to very quickly jump onto that because I know for a fact that many people are relying on node test running the index.js file in a subdirectory test. And that is not, I mean, the directory is supposed to be extensionless, and package resolution or module resolution in Node is defined to do that. And if we went that path, then we would break anyone who relies on an index.js file in a subdirectory in the current directory.
So, yeah. So I really feel that if we change the way that what you type in the command line, if you type npm node test or whatever it is, if we are going to change that, we really need to go through a deprecation cycle. We need to have a release where we put out like a warning saying this is not going to work in a future node release. We can't just stop that working. We need to go through a deprecation cycle because it's such a major change to the way people expect Node to work.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Thank you, Joey. Yeah. So I think it will be significantly better to ship it as node -- run, because it will enable us to backport it through all lines. Okay, and specifically, it will enable us to land it on 20, which is still maintenance, but we still do backports there, which means that it could be, we shorten the adoption cycle. In parallel, we could do the deprecation cycle for the node run pattern. So if the file gets picked automatically, we can emit a deprecation warning. And in 23 and then 24, have the node run command as it is. I don't know if this makes sense, but this is my recommendation.
We fixed it. Sorry.
Is it so critical that we may not just support both? Oh, sorry.
This one is Elise from.
Elise?
This one is Elise from.
Elise.
Or
Unmute.
Yeah, I guess you have your hands up.
Yeah, sorry, I should have lowered it.
Yeah, so
But since I have the opportunity to talk, I think that might be a reasonable change. I agree with Matteo. Maybe we should just like I respect the deprecation cycle. I don't see it as a deprecated feature, but if others see it, then I have nothing else to add because I respect that decision. Then I can just change the PR to node -- run and make it somewhere minor, and then we can backport it to every release. And in the future, we can also make it a warning and put it there.
I personally don't believe, and we should always break people. And as such, why does it hurt to have two ways in place? Like we could have node run, we could have node -- run. I don't really see a big difference as such for users. We just have to document it properly. But is there any other real downside in keeping both?
It sounded like in previous discussions, you're concerned about how we don't document things very well. So I am concerned that introducing more surface area, API surface area that is maybe conflicting. So if you have two different ways to do something, you don't know the paved path or the right way. And then it's obviously increases the surface area we have to support and maintain long term. It probably then means that it's going to be harder to maintain the documentation for that as well, which is, you know, I guess I'm just raising the concern that we should probably pick one way of, you know, doing something if we think it adds value. And that's, you know, in my personal opinion, that's the biggest thing I've seen in some of the feedback on this specific PR and this functionality is what's the value over the existing mechanisms for executing scripts.
I cannot seem to raise my hand by Zoom because I'm sure it's linked, but so one thing I recently noticed when I read the documentation was that they have like a actual kind of tutorial of how you use the command line interface. So I think we kind of lack that because what we do have like a synopsis that tells you like, that gives you like the node dash help output, kind of like that kind of dump into a web page. But other than that, there is the CLI.md converted into an HTML format, which is like a list of all the command line options. But if you're a beginner, how are you supposed to fish your command line option out of these alphabetically assorted list? So I guess maybe one actionable thing would be like, I'm not, volunteering to write the doc. But like one thing I think we should think about is like having a dedicated page on like some of the most used command line interfaces that you're going to run. Like for example, even if we add node run, I'm not even sure how you're supposed to document it so that beginners know that this is what they're looking for when they started using Node. So we probably need to have a kind of TLDR page or like tutorial page on how to use the command line interface. Yeah, that's my point.
So I just wanted to comment on the flag versus non or subcommand. Oh, do you need, was that? Oh, yeah, okay, cool.
Sorry, Wes. So one thing that I'll say about the documentation piece again is just that if we introduce this, again, going back to what beginners should be expecting, we should really document how this differs from the existing tooling that people are using, or that, so like, what can you expect to break? What isn't going to be there, right? That does, like, there's already paved paths here. So it's, if we're doing something new that has less features and less capabilities, we should really document, that that's the case. Like, what environment variables are there? What's not being set? Like all of those types of things. So I think that's probably lacking in the current state of the current PR. Go ahead.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, by the way. I think I even said to Iggy's a couple of times, like, I think if we document this as very bare bones, like intentionally so, like it does explicitly state, this does not support all the things your package manager does, then that like makes me feel a lot more comfortable with it. Because the very first comment in that thread is like, oh, you should add all these other things. And I'm like, I understand where that user is coming from. That person, I'm not sure who it was, but like,
Other than performance.
right, of course. But that's why that you'd have to be very explicit in the docs and say, this is intentionally not doing these things and never will. And here is why. Because this is for performance, yada, 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 whatever. And I think that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. But I did want to mention on the flag versus subcommand thing, I'm leaning more and more toward the flag. I think that actually is a better user experience. One of the use cases that I didn't really think about until I was, the past couple of days, since I haven't made any comments in the thing, was that people do run things like node test, because node test will run the index.js file from your test directory, right? So if you had like a, what? node test. So if you have a test file that is runnable, right, you can literally just run today, no test, right? So that's actually like a pretty cool feature. And then adding subcommands means we are potentially breaking if there was a run directory and that was part of somebody's workflow. Like that to me is actually good enough reason probably just to say move it to a flag. And then with Mateo's comment, anyway, I think that like, to be honest, that seems like a pretty good justifiable like set of reasons to just say that should be changed before this lands. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think I agree very much with that.
Yanis is next.
Yes, Yagis, you have your hand up. You wanna?
Yes, so all of the limitations of the task runner is already documented. I wasn't interested in adding those in the first, but Geoffrey insisted and even contributed those limitations. So we have some sort of limitations which I didn't deliberately add because they were all dependent on npm and npm name. But other than that, we already support 99% of the feature set of Task Runner and without any performance implications.
Now I have a question. What do you mean by 99%? Like, is there a thorough documentation on everything that is supported, from both like npm, yarn, pnpm versus your current implementation?
So the only thing that we don't support right now, because I was planning on writing this on C++, and I didn't want to invest more on it, was due to the fact that we don't traverse to the parent folder until we find a package JSON. And when we find a package JSON, then we find the scripts, and then we find the node modules.bin folder. So we need to add all of the traversing folders to the path, and Ada says hi.
Right, the recursive navigation to find the package JSON.
So one piece of feedback there, it sounds like there's probably not all the arguments and flags that npm run supports, like let's say workspaces, for instance, included in nodes
Right.
run.
Right. Yeah, I think the surface might be larger than.
But that's what we would be explicitly saying we're not doing, right?
Exactly.
And that's why I'm saying isn't documented. So saying that everything is documented is, I think, incorrect right now.
Yeah, and I'm afraid when we say like, oh, we're supporting 99%, yeah, like that, like you.
So
you thought
is
about
npm workspaces not documented in the existing pull request? So
good
this
question.
this is kind of a slippery slope. If npm releases a new version that adds the new features to package JSON, then should we update our existing documentation?
Oh no, but I mean, you're not supporting. Your current implementation is not supporting workspaces, for example, right?
Yes, it doesn't support.
Right.
Because that's an npm feature.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Like we should not try to document what we're not supporting, but we should be very specific about what we are supporting with this implementation here. And I just think like we should probably not frame it as a 99%, like you say, like it's a moving target, right? Like, so what if Yarn adds this other feature? Like then it's not 99, maybe it's not going to be 98%, right? Like so I think we should be very specific on the surface, right? Like, okay, this is what we are supporting. So if it's clearly documented on the PR, I think that's already a great start. And yeah, I just wanted to add, what I wanted to add first is that I think that -- run, using that instead of the subcommand, also kind of helps with that UX for developers, kind of like, communicating that this is not exactly the same thing as npm run, right? Like, so kind of sets up that expectation already, right? Like the fact that this is a named argument. Like, I think that there is that argument to be made too. So, and I wanted to kind of just point it out. Like, I think it also helps with the communication point of view that might not be straightforward.
Next one is Michael.
Oh, great. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I think I just wanted to add to what Roy was saying is that I think that the approach of the documentation basically saying this is not an implementation of what is in the other runs very specifically, and then the only things supported are these things, right? Like we shouldn't try and do it at like point to the existing documentation or anything like that. Just be very specific that says this is never going to include everything. It only includes these specific things. And then your last point about having maybe even like slightly different syntax not being a bad thing in that context, that kind of makes sense to me too.
Yeah, I raised my hand for Luke.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I raised my hand. I'm not a. I just wanted to mention that I'd be willing to contribute to the docs of what this doesn't support. I'm on the NPM team. I have thorough knowledge of all the NPM RCs that we parse. I believe it's 6 different locations when you run, and then all those get converted to environment variables and are exposed to NPM or to within NPM run. So I just wanted to say that, and to echo what Roy said, it's very difficult to frame the API surface area in terms of percent because, like environment variable parsing and config value parsing might be considered one feature, but it might be considered to another user, the entirety of what they need from NPM run. So I just wanted to mention that. And I do think that having a list of what's not supported in the docs, a bulleted list, easy for users to read, easier for them to go through and look, and that way they can see like, oh yeah, I know I'm not using any of this stuff. I can use Node Run instead.
Right. Yeah, so I think we have a consensus here that Node Run is this subset or slightly smaller surface, right?
Next one is Michael. Michael.
Right. Yeah, Michael, go ahead, please.
I think I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure we are making progress here. So like if we do have some consensus on, okay, this is a subset of features. I think that kind of answers a lot of the current open questions from in the pull request, right? Like that this is the surface area that we're defining, like it's properly documented in the pull request, right? And it's not aiming to replace NPM run or be, 6 times or 30 times faster than it, like, because it doesn't matter, right? It's not 100% the same thing, right? So, and I think if we're all on board with that, like, I mean, I think that answers a lot of the open questions currently blocking the pull request there. Anybody disagrees, has objections?
I don't disagree, but I still think the conversation we're going to have in the next thing about a version manager, one of the things that has come up a couple of times is maybe we need the entire .bin on your path. If we do that and we have this doing that, I think it introduces a couple of interesting user experience things that we just need to make sure we think through. And I have not personally had the time to think them through. So if somebody else has thought through like what that would look like, I would love to hear it. But to me, it seems like there's just a little bit of risk left because we don't have that story figured out. And so if we end up having some conflicting thing and we ship this now, we're at least committing to some level of supporting Node having a coupling to the .bin directory. And that would be the first one.
Do we want to ship this experimental run?
Oh, is it? I thought, it wasn't going to be even experimental, was it? Sorry.
It wasn't even a
You're
flag,
right, it's not.
Now we're in the right? So
There's just an area of risk, that's all. I don't know if it's worth changing for, but it feels like there needs to be a little bit of thought put into making sure that we're not setting ourselves up to then have to break it.
Right.
That's all. And I'm not sure we will. Again, I'm not saying I'm just saying it feels like there's some overlap here.
I see Michael has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand that concern a little bit better. Like I think it's good to not have to use the package manager to run your application itself. So it's like it's I think you're thinking about a slightly different use case. I just wanted to better understand that.
Yeah, I am thinking about a different use case. So anybody who is using npm start to run their app in production is doing it wrong. So somebody probably told everybody here too at some point, it is not the right way to do things. So like we should not enable, or we should be helping to remove that from the common practice any way we can. And if node run is the way to do that, that's fine. But node no run is the way to do that. And if you're not running node directly with a bunch of flags to tune it for your environment, you're probably already doing it wrong, right? And so if you encode all those into your npm scripts and then you ship npm on your production images, you're doing it wrong, right? Like, and we should figure out ways to pave the road for people to do it right, which is to ship a very slimmed down thing that just has node and doesn't have npm to production, because that's the better way to do it, right? And so like when I talk about the risk here, I wasn't thinking about the starting your application with the package manager, because I think that is just just fundamentally you're already wrong. So like don't do that. So I was thinking way more about it for use in development for things like onboarding, proof of concepting, getting a simple package set up without, maybe it's a dependency free package and you don't even need npm and you just want to have some scripts in there that you run on your local machine. Like that, those are the use cases that I was thinking about. So the risk there isn't about the like starting your application part. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, no, yeah, that does. It does make me think, like, do we have a common understanding of what this is targeted at? Like, is it targeted at both of those or one of those, or because that context might be helpful to capture as well.
Okay, so I wanted to respond on a little bit to Wes. So in a lot of projects that I am involved, we have a top level npm script, then call multiple npm scripts. Okay, and so imagine that this is what happens: is you have one npm script that spawns like 5, and then you have lost a second. Okay, which is noticeable. Okay, so removing that second and making it possible to do that kind of flow within itself, okay, I think it's worthwhile on its own, okay?
Yeah.
I just don't want to lose the concept of something you said, and I think somebody needs to open an issue, because we need to document this possibly in the learn stuff, how to tune Node.js for production, because quite a few people in the room knows how to do this, but I would probably call it a dark art that we're not telling anybody. And me included, by the way. So I'm not, it's we are all dark magicians here, and we keep our secrets to ourselves. So okay, but yeah, we really need to document this, because between settings of max space, max hold space, max semi space, how does one should increase one, why should increase the other, what are the consequences, as well as should I use some logic to protect my event loop or not. All of this needs to be more or less explained in a learn page. So it's I just don't want to lose it. So if
and that learn page definitely shouldn't put it in package JSON.
That's correct. Look, I have not. This is, it also creates some odd problems with signals if you use npm start in the Docker image. And by the way, this is a problem. Our Docker image by default call npm start.
Yes, I know. This is why I'm saying this. Yes.
So again,
we are telling people to do this, and it is not good.
We are telling people to do this. So I'm just making everybody aware. So.
Yeah, this is just like a bit of feedback on in terms of like where we're pointed and where we're spending time. Because doing npm run obviously is a net new capability for Node, but it's something that there's already existing tool that does this work. And it sounds like there's consensus here that we believe that npm could be faster. And there's already consensus here that a lot of people use it to run scripts. It'd be great to be contributing back to a tool that's already codified in so many people's projects, workflows, and improving that performance, because the person sitting beside me, I know, has already commented on the fact that there is performance improvements to be made. And so if people are looking for, places to contribute, I think it would actually have way more impact if we were spending our time actually improving a tool we're already shipping in Node Core. So that's just one piece of feedback in terms of like improving a tool that we already ship that's already in people's workflow. And if you made contributions to it to improve its speed, you'd actually probably have a much bigger impact a lot faster, because we have to think about how this is going to roll out. It's going to take a couple of years to get into people's hands potentially based on how they upgrade Node, based on when they potentially think this is stable, potentially, and then, so it's just I guess a bit of feedback or my own personal opinion on how we approach, contributions like this, but I'll let Luke maybe respond.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that I do think there's an interesting discussion to be had around shared primitives. In this specific case, like looking up package JSONs, caching package JSON contents, walking up to find package JSON, stuff like that, that NPM could benefit from doing, or is currently doing and could benefit from a faster way to do in core. I don't exactly know what all those could be, but as far as performance goes, I think making those faster in core and having a way for NPM to do them would be an immediate benefit to NPM at least. And I'd like to think the other package managers are doing something similar as well and would also benefit.
Sorry, I have my hand up. Sorry. I think someone posted in the Node run pull request that there used to be like a Hacker News thread where someone actually analyzed why npm run was slow. They did a breakdown of why it was slow. And I think the majority of time it was spent on trying to parse the version of Node and make sure that it's compact. And I think as far as I can tell from that detailed analysis, maybe someone can like look up the page of the Node run pull request where at the bottom there was someone posting a Hacker News thread. But I think most of that is kind of unrelated to what Node can help with. They're more kind of tied to how npm CLI works, like the features, so to speak, that they provide. And also like, I think also someone from npm mentioned in the thread about there is this complexity of trying to be able to install all like on top of itself, like upgrade itself, which makes it impossible for npm to do lazy require or like lazy loading. I think that's probably difficult for Node to like help optimize if that's not something you can do. Maybe like I think in a separate thread, someone mentioned that it's possible to bundle npm. I think that might be a possible solution. But at the end of the day, from what I can tell from that Hacker News reply analysis, a lot of that probably still comes down to npm. The npm CLI need to kind of like try to do less when it's not spawned to do run. But that's more like application logic, not really something that Node can help with, especially the parsing Node version part.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, and I also like to counter a little the argument, like, because it's a lot of what this group has been about. It has been about promoting, common features, that very often have established frameworks in the user space into the runtime, into core, right? So, and I think like if we, a subset of Node run like that lives in the runtime, I think it makes a lot of sense. So like I was coming from the same point of view, right? Like having worked on package managers and everything, right? Like I was on, I was very much on that, and I kind of like, thinking a little about this and like the type of problems, right? Like similar to how Yargs and like and Commander got together to eventually ship some minimal set of features in core, right? Like with parse args. I think Node Run is very poised. Like I think it's a very good thing to do to move forward with the idea of the original PR, right? Like I think then there's the whole discussion of subcommands who need to be split apart just so that we can it doesn't prevent that from landing, right? I think it's a benefit to the ecosystem.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out two things. So 200 milliseconds means nothing when what you're doing is running a 20-minute CI/CD pipeline. So like, let's be clear about what we're trying to solve here. 200 milliseconds, the only time that matters is when you are running a already very fast command or a chain of commands in your local machine. That is the only place where anybody cares about 200 milliseconds here, right? So to be very clear, like what this is setting us up for is being able to, without additional tooling, do the Mateo thing of that you talked about earlier of one top level NPM script that runs like 20. That's the case we're helping with the performance, which is fine. It's good. It's all good, but it is not very impactful in the big scheme of performance here, because what people are actually doing in the real world is they're running 20-minute integration tests on top. I mean, like, look, and we're not saving anybody anything with a 200 millisecond speed up there. Especially since we're telling them we should be telling people not to use this to start their app in production. Like this makes the impact of this quite a bit smaller, which is actually probably a good thing. I think that makes it lower risk, and I think there's a bunch of good reasons for that. But just to be clear on like what we're actually doing when we talk about performance in relation to this specific feature, that's like the one use case really. And then you mentioned one of the problems that NPM has, which is causing this state, is not being able to unbundle and do like conditional loading. There's two ways I think they could approach that. One of them could be, and Luke and I talked about this last week, is if NPM moved away from it installing itself globally. If we had a way to offload how NPM installs itself to something that was not NPM, then we actually get around that, and NPM could start making some optimizations or even unbundling, or like there's a bunch of ways that NPM could do that. But that would require us to have an installer that the NPM team agrees on, which would be not NPM itself. So there's like, I think that could be fairly promising. And then that would enable the NPM team to start doing things that help speed it up. And then we avoid sort of the performance thing is, I get a little bit just worried that we over-index on it sometimes. And in this case, like really, there's the one use case that I think this actually helps, because it's not, most people have tests that take 20 minutes. I'm sorry. Like that's the real world of these apps.
Well, I have the problem, so I'm pretty much sold on using this. So this is it will shelve me 1 second out of 10 probably, or 20, which to be honest, I think it's meaningful. So I am not too. I think it's a good addition on that side. It's something you said. It's about NPM installing globally. I don't know exactly how it relates.
It was Joey, you mentioned that that's one of the blockers for them improving the performance. That's one of the blockers that's been listed as for them improving NPM run performance in the first place.
From NPM mentioned that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we need to talk at some point. I don't know where that discussion happened. But the problem of the permissions of globally installed NPM thingy needs to be. Somebody's laughing. It's a problem. Okay, it's like you should not be installing NPM globally. Period. Okay, and a lot of our downstream distribution do that, including our own installer, which is it's one of the sources of my personal frustration on that. So yeah, well, it's why can't you just fix it? That's before there's this long story there. It's you could just fix it. Okay. Anyway, this is the fun bit. Okay, sorry. This was
Yeah, and do anyone else wants to comment? To just sum up here the conversation, I know there is this last comment review from Tierney on the original pull request, and I think we made meaningful progress here to answer kind of like all or most, I hope, of these open-ended questions here. Like, so what is it supposed to be? So I think we're defining very clearly this is a subset. Like, it's not supposed to be the same thing. It's a different thing from npm run and what the other package managers are implementing. So I think it's better defined now as a scope of what this command is, right? Like, I think are we sure that it will stay faster than npm run once everything is implemented? I think it doesn't matter once we define that it's not the same scope, right? Like, so, right. And yeah, it shouldn't matter, but it's very likely to be much, much faster. But I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, for most real use cases, like that's. So Miles brought up, should we shift focus to work with package managers? I think I kind of speak up to it. I think like this feature kind of makes sense to be promoted, right? Like to core, to runtime, kind of like be, and that's kind of how I'm seeing right now. But I think that can continue to have conversation on the pull request. But personally, I don't think it's a blocker to the implementation anymore. I know Jeff, there is a comment from Jeff here stating that we should enumerate what features from npm run we don't plan to support. And I think we're mostly against that. Like we want to document exactly what this is, but we don't want to document against a moving target, right? Like, that's also the other consensus here. And Robert also had a comment here. Not sure if we answered everything. Yes.
Lucas is hand up. I'm not sure why he's not joining you.
Oh, who?
I'm trying to figure out how to lower my hand now that I'm a panel.
Oh, right.
So, but I had my hand accidentally raised, but it wasn't showing when I was just.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just Zoom technical issues. Okay. But
5 more minutes.
yeah, and I think I'm very happy. I think we made some progress with this discussion. So yes, anything, Joy, do you want the microphone?
Someone. So Vinicius it was like 20 minutes ago. Vinicius asked in the chat, is it a bad idea to ship another binary to handle the subcommands like what we have with npx or CorePack?
Yeah, I think we ended up not getting too much into the subcommand conversation, right? Like we went too deep into the rabbit hole of the current run implementation, right? Like we haven't really touched this subcommand. I'll let Tobias I know you have something to add, but I think after that we should probably close. Like,
I just want to give everyone a horrible idea. In the context of the recent ESM discussions, there was a brief mention of a Node 2 binary that we would ship in addition to, and then later as a replacement of Node. So if anyone is still up for doing that for whatever reason, you might as well start adding subcommands to Node 2 instead of breaking Node.
Can instead of doing Node 2, we can just do Node? Or maybe we can do Don. You know?
We can't. That's an
We call it Don. We can call it Don.
No, Ron. That was just no.
No.
No, Ron. No.
all right, yeah, no, but yeah, thank you everyone for who participated, and yeah, guys, I really hope this was helpful for that specific conversation. But this is kind of like the mission, the idea that the group was kind of build upon, right? And hopefully, like, you know, the group can remain active and remain helping with these conversations. I think like it's very important to have, you know, when people are proposing new features, want to collaborate on these features, maybe like make an effort to bring it, you know, to the group to you know, to kind of kickstart conversations on it. I think like it can be very helpful place for, you know, collaboration. And yes, for now, I don't think we don't have regular meetings at the moment. So we're kind of doing every collab summit. We're trying to keep running the tooling, but I'm not going to promise anything this time. I promised last time around that I was going to to start the regular calls again, and I couldn't back then. So I'm not going to promise it. But if we work out something, if there are people, you know, volunteer to run this call, like it might be something that goes back into the regular schedule of meetings for the Node calendar. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Can we start? I don't know. Format.
Are knives involved?
Make sure we remove them.
Yeah. No, knives are not allowed in this conversation.
We have 2 more minutes for the remote participants to break a bit before the next session.
Check our bags. I don't know exactly. I owe you. I don't know which one is perfect.
Trying to do it during that session.
We did.
Yeah,
Well,
we are
the
working on
restaurant
it.
application is yeah, I need. Because I need to do. Is this called?
He gave the ideas for it.
Then I will come back. We'll probably meet you at 6 p.m. Okay, I'm okay. Okay, that's why I was on the phone. Okay, there we go. This is why Karen is in my. Yeah, that's good. Aren't you glad that somebody is texting?
I already told you, I will never admit it.
Yeah. Has a dynamic.
Basically,
How tiny. I'm very, I'm so. We have actually. Oh, you did send it to me. Hello. Sorry, I don't. For now, let's do it. That's the security. If he's gonna send people back to tell me that they're fine. So, anyway, yeah. How are you going to get in contact with us when you, do you have a time when you love you? So, yeah, around Express had a test that failed. The meeting and so Canary in the Gold Mine and Express still supporting. All the way back. If you're busy. Thanks for letting me know that you're leaving. It's the latest possible timing and getting that work done, and you'll be able to get your bags. What saved this profound this whole. Yeah, I know. Good to know that. Good to know. Thank you for contacting. Good stuff. So I'll make sure that. Okay, so I'll just like message you on Slack. Yeah. That would. Bring down the different versions with the names filled in. Can you produce those versions with the names filled in? It should be just a second.
If you could use that link and people write it.
Yes, let's do that. So, the thing on this Windows side, which is where it opened into, I don't have, oh no, but I think it has.
Okay. Should be good to go.
Oh, go for it, yeah.
So I'm gonna ping Ulysses and tell him single-handedly just say no for Brian.
What?
Sorry, break is over.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Break is over. We need to restart now. Sorry. But don't worry, we'll have another 10-minute break at 16. So the next session is the facilitator is Wes and maybe a few others. Not sure if they're going to the podium, but yeah, it's the package management working group and version management working session, aka Corpac.
AKA Corpac, hopefully not. Okay, so. Oh, did he? Oh, he stepped out.
Like 1 minute.
We can fuck with it.
Yeah, 1 minute. We
60
can wait.
seconds, just because.
Yeah, that's good. Let's go slow. We don't need to, we're not rushing. We got 2 hours for this.
Yeah, actually 2 minutes.
Yes. Go get your water, go to the bathroom. We've got a break, I think, in the middle, so, you know. We're not bike shedding. I'm gonna set some context on what the goals of this are in a moment, and it will be clear that it is not to fight and it is not to bike shed. Ideally, we can make it to at least halfway through without really talking about any of the specifics of these things.
That shall not be named.
Yeah.
I think if you were probably
A lot of us. I don't know what Garth mentioned.
Yeah, I still have one of the I'm officially starting this.
Actually, I think I have to take that back, or do we want to? The way we had written the initial plan was that we would do a recap of the history of the version management working group and the history of Corpac at the beginning. Do we think that's necessary? Or should we just punt that till a little like halfway through? Oh, exactly. I know. That's what I was trying to hopefully avoid. Okay. So we'll keep with this then. So I think we were just waiting for Mateo to get back. Is that?
I guess we can shout it out. We're waiting for Mateo to come back to start the session. So it's like in a chatter phase right now. Sorry.
Good call. Yeah, sorry. I didn't. Yeah, if he doesn't come back in just a minute though, yeah, well, how about when you come back, we'll start whether Mateo's back or not. Okay.
Still in progress. Potentially. Not promise. Potentially we could upload the stuff from that if we want to. By someone to.
Sorry, I just looked over your shoulder and saw it. Does anybody maintain this framework issue?
Yeah, it just like.
That's actually an express. Okay. I love these issues. People who open these discussions and issues are
Because I was looking for any.
possibly my
information about
least
it.
favorite people. Oh, you want to know about the Express stuff? There is an issue in the discussions repo.
Yeah.
So if you go over to the,
Go to discussion.
if not, just, yeah, we have a discussion repo which pre-existed. Okay, Mateo's back. We're getting started. Okay. We didn't let you. We didn't let you. Okay. Okay, so I want to start off with a little bit of level setting. The goal of this session is to get us all humans on the same page about what our goals are in these areas. There is a bunch of pre-existing history and context, probably more than most people ever want to read about this available. We will hopefully not cover that in excruciating detail, but we're going to do a quick recap of just where we're at. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to do this little recap covering the version management. Was it a working group or was it just a summit? I think it was just a summit. Wasn't actually spun. Was it spun up as a working group? I can't remember. No? Okay. So we're going to cover just a little bit about what happened there. We're going to cover the current state of CorePack and where it's at with development, what the next few steps are. And then we're going to go into a brainstorming session on what our actual goals are for the Node project in this domain. So talking a little bit higher level, not necessarily speaking directly to CorePack or one of the pre-existing version managers that's out there. But we want to talk about like, what is the user experience we want to deliver? What problems are we trying to solve with offering any tooling in this area? And then make sure we align on some of that. And then once we have that, I imagine we're going to probably have a bunch of technical details we've got to probably nitpick. So I figured we'd do like, the way I've structured it to try to fill the 2 hours here is like 10 minutes just to do the recap and intro, 30 minutes to do this brainstorming exercise, 30 minutes to dive into some of the technical stuff, and make sure we're all on the same page on those. And then a discussion of whether or not this requires chartering by the package maintenance working group to make this effectively happen. And then at the end, just a little bit of extra time to like probably work out some of the next steps and stuff like that.
And I would very much beg to the group to not go into tangents too much, right? Like we want to stay focused. Let's try to time box to stick to the plan.
Yes, ideally we do that because this is a topic that we know we can all spend hours talking about. Okay, is everybody good? So maybe I was gonna tap, but also he volunteered you, Darcy, by the way, that you might remember more about what happened in the version management summit. So I don't know if you want to can somebody just talk through a little bit about like what happened there? What was the conclusions? What should we be learning from to make sure we're not going to like repeat?
Sure.
A
First,
bunch?
I think you're confusing a lot of folks because it was called the Binary Management Summit.
Sorry, you're right.
So that will help give some folks some context that whoever was there. There was only a few of us, and I think that we did discuss node version managers particularly. So I think there was a focus on Volta, ASDF, some other and some other folks. To be honest, like I think it was really only probably like a day's worth of content, and the discussions sort of talked about what's the landscape look like, should we do something like this. I know there was some interest in like end-to-end tool chain. Like I think that was James Snell's interest, was end-to-end tool chaining, similar to what you see with Rust Up. And I think the outcome from that, if you look at the notes that we took, was let's investigate this some more. And I don't think anything was ever followed up. And so that happened several years ago, I think probably 3-4 years ago. And then also as outcome, they voted on CorePack and then decided to land that. So that was kind of tied into it, but it wasn't, I don't think it was necessarily one-to-one associated with it. And we didn't really get into package management specifically, but node version management was basically, and we did talk about the installer and other kind of options for configuring builds and doing version management or binary management.
Is there anything you can think of that we should be aware of that was discussed so that we don't rehash?
No, we were really just like, we're looking at the landscape, saying this was interesting for the I think, the project, and then unfortunately nobody took further steps to. Yeah, it was at the time. I believe, I'm not sure if it was named Corpac at the time. It might have been still package manager. I could be wrong. I can't remember exactly.
Okay, and now I can try to make a summary of the history of how Corpac came to be in Node. Well, I guess the story starts when NPM is created. I'm going to refer to the Humblebee documentary, which was very good explaining all of that. But after that, the earliest trace I could find was from 2016, where there was some feature requests started popping up on the Node issue tracker asking for alternatives to NPM to be bundled. And then fast forward to 2020, when there's a so yeah, it started in the Yarn project. Yarn is an alternative to NPM, where because they released some very major version, they started to feel the need to specify which version of Yarn each project should use. And they also was interested in having these features in Node. So Mail, which is a developer behind Yarn, proposed one of his projects for that. And yeah, there was a I guess James was also leading this effort at the time to try to define what it should do and what it should look like. But yeah, most of the work was done by Mael, and we still didn't get consensus of should we land the Corpac, or should we add Yarn, or should we do nothing. The TSC took a vote to integrate Corpac, so it landed as experimental. And yeah, I guess here we are now. Someone opened an issue asking if Corpac could be enabled by default, which spawns lots of discussions, which you can read if you want. And here we are. So there are a few objections to how Corpac operates that have been raised. There are, I guess, some missing features also that we can discuss. Let's discuss.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and so, and then one other thing to mention here with the current state of things, we've also been having a collab space with the foundation to work on package JSON interop is effectively the way to think about it. And so we were documenting some things. So we used that as an avenue to explore the dev engines field edition. So if you want to go check out conversations around that, you can go there. I have a proposal document I'm going to read a few things from here that also I think tries to cover a bit of that. We'll link the issue. I just opened, actually. Does somebody have the chat? Anyway, okay, so now that we kind of understand and everybody's on the same page on sort of where we're at, what we want to do here is do a bit of a brainstorming session on what exactly we think we can solve, what we should be solving around this binary version management. Some of the things like Mateo's, like don't install NPM globally, like that seems like that should be on the list of user experience things we need to solve. I think, you know, the Corpac, as we heard about with the history, like that is on, I think that should probably be, you know, one of the goals is to make sure we are helping people, you know, have tools that build their project, you know, and they can define it in a standardized way. But the floor is open. Those are just like things that we know of here. So I think like, yeah, anybody got, you know, want to talk about other goals that, yeah, I think.
So before we go into the goals, I want to say something about the status quo, which was probably not mentioned. Real people, real users are using Corpac every day. Like, And a lot of the discussions are not considering that as something. Okay, there is the question about how those tools, how those systems, how we are migrating out those people out. They're relying on experimental features. It's been around for a couple of years. Is mentioned as one of the key installation method of both Yarn and PMPM, and a lot of people are using it, and which it's something of like, it seems that this kind of thing is actually liked a lot by folks. So I think it's relevant because it's not just about us making the decisions. We need to take into account the end user point of view and the response to it. So
Totally. I just wanted to say, like, totally, I think that we have to consider the personas of the people that we're trying to support. And I think to your point, yeah, there's a ton of usage. I think that the projects like PNPM and Yarn have encouraged the usage of it. So there might be more usage than we would normally see with an experimental feature. But also we want to make sure that we support those people and give them on ramps and off ramps. So I'm +1 with you in terms of like making sure people are supported. And I actually think there's actually value in, you know, defining your package manager version. And I think locking into projects also makes sense. I think there's also just different tooling that people have used historically to solve that problem. And we can discuss sort of the solution itself, right?
Yeah, so this kind of does get in, okay, yeah.
I just have a follow-up question to Matteo. So a lot of people are using Corpac, but what part of Corpac are they using? Are they using it just to install Yarn and PNPM? Are they using the pinning feature? Like Corpac does a number of things. So what of those things is it that we don't want to break?
So they are basically using the jumper files. So they do Corpac enable and forget about it. And they're not deliberately using the pinning version of it. So, which it's a problem on its own. And then they're using PNPM start for starting their app. Sorry.
I'm not going to die on that hill, but it's like definitely.
I'm just, so basically this is what I see them doing it. So I was as surprised when I saw it for the first time. I was incredibly, the moment when I stamped into this was when I started receiving reports on our product because PNPM shipped a bug, and basically they didn't use the pinning feature of Corpac, and then But I think that everybody got hit by that bug, but I was not. It's the same bug that hit Vercel. I think I don't know.
The back stuff there was as well as.
Yeah, well, it was their stuff, but yeah, overall, there was a bug there was a change in PNPM that was relatively problematic for us and for our users.
So just to sort of circle this back a little bit toward the goals oriented, like what are our goals? I think to me, one of the critical goals is encouraging the proper use of pinning to help prevent package managers, bugs, introducing breakage in builds.
I would put one level up and I would call it reproducible builds.
Okay.
As a goal, it's I think this is
yeah.
Well, it's stating the obvious probably, but it's actually very important. I'm using this thing. It should not, if with all things being the same, it should work.
So I would love if one of our top goals was just generically reproducible builds, and I think we should take anything here that any scope here that helps make reproducible builds work better or be more reproducible, that should be within the scope. And to me, node version is absolutely a part of that. And so the current like implementations we have don't cover that. So I would say that we should be venturing to cover node version, Python version probably for binary modules. Is there anything else? That's like, I mean, those are the, and package manager, right? So like node version, package manager, and Python version, I think are the like the critical things that we don't have a thing around today.
What I want to say ended up being a lot of overlap with that, but I just had an anecdote about recently NPM 10 had a bug that is now fixed as of today, and a user on our issue tracker was asking just how long it's going to take to land in Node, and I was able to give him a timeline of like 2 to 4 weeks, but for any application developer in the meantime, they're going to have to come up with their own solution on either pinning to an old version of NPM or getting the latest version that we're going to publish today. And there's no good, I mean, there's a lot of, from bad to good on the spectrum of ways to do that. And we should just be giving users a way to do that.
Yeah, on the topic of reproducible builds, I think it's also important that we make the DX nudge folks into choosing reproducible builds, because it's already possible, right, to do reproducible builds. You can pin your package manager, even your node version, but nobody is doing that because it's not the easy path. So should be a goal also.
Do you think it should be the default path, or do we think it should be like how much do we want to lean into this? Like if we're trying to help people do reproducible builds, we could like force it. I'm not saying we should, but like how far do we think we should be going on offering that kind of support? Darcy.
Yeah, I would just also, something I think I noted in that internal Slack channel was just what's the difference between a package manager and any other dependency. And so when we're talking about these strategies about, let's say, for creating reproducible builds, what's our strategy for dependency management really broadly? And what are we trying to encourage to the ecosystem, or what kind of tooling are we trying to create for the ecosystem to do dependency management, really? And so that, like, I think you should look at the existing package manager tooling and say, what are they doing and how do they handle dependency management, pinning, etc., and why potentially have non-Semver semantics and grammars being added to, let's say, something like Node Semver to maybe potentially help with actually keeping dependencies evergreen. Why was that like introduced? I think those are questions we should ask, because pinning is great, but there's also side effects to that strategy. So just to be mindful.
So would you sort of generalize that to say that there are multiple modes in which projects operate, some where pinning explicitly is ideal and some where a looser interpretation is best? Like, I'm just trying to rephrase it as like some goal that we could like target around this product.
Yeah, the context is important, right? So you could have a loose range of acceptable versions that for development, but then you lock yourself in, i.e. lock files, to a specific version once you are distributing software, right? So there's like two modes, two contexts, which we should be mindful of, making sure we don't make maintenance of our dependencies tough, right? So right now, it's actually really tough, as Luke said, to ship an update for NPM, because we not only do we pin it, we literally distribute that source in, right? So it's super tough to update. So it's not like some coupling that we have in a manifest.
And so on the point of it's tough to ship NPM, do we think another goal is to reduce the burden of maintainership of the required tools to build node projects? So this would be like can we could we set a goal of making it easier for the NPM team to ship NPM within Node? Like, is that a goal we care about?
I don't know. That's something to ask him.
And like we spoke about pinning, etc. But when let's come back also to stuff like Corpac, to name that again. In this case, we already have it in place, and we can fix a couple of these issues. So, and the question for me is like, is there a way that we would be happy with having it enabled at some point in our project? And I believe we could have that as long as we make sure that it, for example, asks for, hey, do you really want to do this? This is going to install that specific version, and there's like no way around it. Like you will only have that version installed. But when there is an update actually for example, that specific package manager, and you run it again, it would give you a warning. Hey, there's a new version out there. Do you want to install this one? You could just do that with a single command, yes or no, stuff like that.
So just to directly respond a little bit to that, I think the critical gap with the existing solution is that it cannot work for Node itself. There is no path toward Corpac in its current design where it can tell you you're also using the wrong Node version. And to do reproducible builds, we need both or all. And so Corpac, unfortunately, right now with its current design, cannot cover that. We can change it too, and that I think should definitely be on the table, but we need to make sure we're clear that one of the goals of reproducible builds necessitates managing Node versions as well as package manager.
That would be great, obviously. But maybe we are making the problem space bigger by including that at the moment, and I would concentrate on solving one issue at a time.
Yeah, I think the scope of Corpac as well is not really well defined, because you you could essentially manage any number of dependencies using that same strategy, right? Like you could add ESLint or some other tooling to Corpac and manage it that way, right? So if we like the functionality that Corpac introduces to manage dependencies, I think the scope is much broader than just package managers. So I think that limiting that solution or that functionality just to package managers and saying that, I think package manager itself as a term is not very well defined anyways. Like, is ESLint a package manager, right? But I think the concern here is that scope gets really big when we haven't clearly defined the criteria around who can and can't be added to a tool like that, which is why you've seen issues open for Bun and CNPM already opened asking to be added to Corpac, right? Also, you start to get into issues with licensing with that distribution or that tool specifically with NPM. I don't think, from my understanding, NPM probably can't be distributed through Corpac without violating the license. So it might be a great tool. In my opinion, it might be a great tool for Yarn and PNPM to be distributed in Node, and we might be able to turn it on and enable it by default in the future. But I think that it's going to have to change its scope, I think.
This is the type of tangent I think we were trying to, just to be clear, I don't want to, we need to understand what our goals are. And I just want to make sure we're not rabbit holing too much on, is Corpac the right fit? We can do that as a follow-up.
But actually, and that's, let's limit the focus as such. What are requirements for us to include package managers that we believe are important? We can define requirements such as some neutral statistics about usages and so on. We can have high requirements. We can all specify this. We won't need to ship whatever we don't believe is really important. And yes, we have to look into it. I believe the TSC, in this case, its responsibility is partially to govern and to say, yes, that is so important for Node.js users that we believe this should be enabled as a very easy ad hoc functionality.
Michael, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks. I think back to your point of trying to figure out our goals versus specific implementations or whatever, the important thing for me is to understand, how do we think this should work in what do we want to work towards? And I can see a future where, like, we don't believe that Node should be packaging up the thing that manages binaries and versions and stuff like that. And, for example, there's something else which manages all of your components. That includes installing Node, that includes installing a package manager you want to use. And so, like, stepping back and first agreeing on, like, what do we think the model is would help, I think, for future discussions, because it doesn't make sense to say, like, do we want to add more package managers if our strategy, if what we'd really like to get to is to the point where something else manages it versus Node itself. So having an agreement on that high level first, then says, okay, then we can say, like, what will get us stepwise towards that goal, or sort of doesn't align with that, right? In which case it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that for managing Node version, yeah, Corpac is probably not a good candidate because it's a JavaScript application, so it needs a JavaScript runtime to run. So there's a bootstrap problem. So yeah, if we want to build something else, it probably needs to be not JavaScript.
We have Node.js. Oh, is yours not working? Here, this one.
Check. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I think there's already a recommended way of managing Node today in the docs, right? MVM is referenced as an install method, right? Is that not correct?
It is, but I think so this is one of the things that I wanted to make sure we covered when we get a little bit more technical deep dive, at least. Does the version manager need to support all the platforms that Node does? I believe yes. NVM does not do that. So we have this break today between the one and I'm not sure if we have a recommendation for the NVS. Is it NVS? The one that works on Windows?
Yeah.
NVMS? Is that the one? We do have that on the website?
I am not sure.
Okay, because if we're going to choose a pre-existing solution, we will need to figure out what are the requirements. So
they're not really recommendations. They are things that people have PR'd into the website. So anyone can go and PR whatever version. And we deliberately took a stance that we were not going to try and promote one over the other. Now it happens that NVM is in the OpenJS Foundation, so maybe that could, is in its favor. But like you said, it doesn't run on all platforms. And crucially, it's not really within the control of the Node project. So if none of the version managers are. So we do not have a version manager that, I'm speaking here from the release team's point of view. The release team produces a release. Our current scripts produce binaries. They go up on the website, the tarballs and the installer that Matteo says is causing all sorts of problems. But at least those are things we can control. If we need, if there's a 0-day bug in NPM, okay, it requires people time, but we have the ability to put up a new version of that. We don't have the ability to influence version managers. Now, we trust they do the right things, and if we put things in the right place, they pick up the right thing. But it's based on trust. We do not have that control. And the question, I guess, for us is, are we comfortable recommending something that we ultimately do not control? And for something as critical as the runtime, if you get that wrong or you compromise the runtime, that's a lot of people that you're affecting.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point, and I think this is why the question of should the package maintenance working group charter for this, because I think if we're going to say we need to control it, I'm not sure we have to, but if we are going to say that, then I think we need to have all these proper pieces put in place. Yes, Michael.
I was going to say, and pointing to NVM, is kind of assuming that we want a tool that just manages Node and something else to manage other parts of your application, right? So again, that's even making assumptions, at least the way it's implemented today, versus the model might be we want one thing which manages all of those. I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's still assuming a particular model by saying, hey, we've got something that manages Node, right?
Yeah, and to be clear, I think this is why I want to be a little hesitant on talking specifically about something like, oh, we recommend NVM. What we want to talk about is what is the goal. So the goal is for users to have a way to install Node and specifically the correct Node version for their individual project, and then to have that be multiple versions of Node on the same developer laptop because they need to switch between projects. Like that, to me, that irregardless of whether NVM enables that or not, we need to like decide on what is the line where we think we've done a good enough job as the Node project making that recommendation. Does it need to be a tool we own? Does it need, or could it be another OpenJS project that we, maybe make like we do with NPM requests? Hey, NPM, here's a thing you need to have because you're shipped with Node. Like we could do the same thing to NVM if we wanted to, if we thought that was a good way.
At least from how it feels like at the moment in the room, everyone agrees to that this would be an ideal goal, that we want to have a way to have reproducible builds, to have a way that Node.js can be updated by its own as such, or whatever way there is. And that's clear. But what we can do is, have everything in one step. So I want to break up that problem space into smaller steps. And I don't care about a specific tool, honestly. I don't care about NVM. I don't care about Corpac. I don't care about NPM as such, to be specific, for having one for one tool or the other. It's more about, okay, we have to provide the users a way that they easily can access these things, update these things, and that should come from Node, one way or the other. We have one tool in place that helps to go into that direction. I don't say it is the ideal tool, but we can move whatever we want in a specific direction. And I believe that's what we really should focus upon, to maybe break it up, like have small steps. And Corpac might be to have it enabled as the first step. We can improve Corpac. We can change it. Even like the language could be changed, whatever, I don't care.
Was that before? Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I still think like we're a little bit in the context of what we have today, which is like Node. We install Node, which includes the package manager. There's already like alternates, just for example, some of the distros, they have their own package managers, and those package managers will let you install Node, they'll let you install NPM, maybe they'll let you install something else. So like, even just thinking about like, well, there's a model where there's something else that installs those parts, like, not just Node, but Node and the package manager and maybe something else. Is that the model we think we should move towards? Or is the model where we've bundled some things in with Node and that's how you get them easily? I'm not saying we change, like remove things and break things, but like our long-term vision could be that the way we'd like people to get all those things is not necessarily because they're packaged with Node, but there's something which will manage your Node version, they'll manage your package manager, and provide the reproducibility, version semantics, and all that for all of those sort of top level components.
So I don't think that is a good end state. We have that in certain ecosystems, and it's why people are still using very old and bad Node versions, because their distribution provider has not updated their package to support and recommend the latest Node, or maybe not even latest, but whatever we as the project would want. So I think we explicitly need to control this in order to enable the goals that we have, which is to people not run Node insecure old nodes, right?
That's a different issue, though. I wasn't saying we adopt those other package managers, but that model where there's something which will install Node and install the other pieces, like, it's not a Node manager. It's whatever you need to run your get your application up and running. We've just happened to package like one package manager in, but I think if it was like a higher level thing which manages installing those things, we might might be less tied to Node versus like, hey, I'm gonna choose this thing which installs all the pieces I need to get going, right? Which is versus having to have them bundled into the one binary that we want to ship.
But that still farms our responsibility out to the people who manage whatever that higher level thing is, right? So if it's,
We can still manage that. Like if we're concerned about managing that, we can still do that, right?
but wait, so we're gonna then take on the work of going to, Debian and saying, hey, now you should be.
No. I'm just
What are-
saying like, maybe it's like, because we're talking about NVM and it's like, hey, we don't have control of that. Like maybe it's like our installers are actually an example where like our installers will install, I guess they just install Node today, but they could give you other options to install other things, right?
Okay, so I think maybe I misunderstood what you were getting at there. So the idea, what you're saying is we would ship a tool to do this.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just not that we don't try and cram it into the Node binary, the Node.
Yeah,
the
okay,
thing
cool.
For Node itself, right? Like
Yeah, that
something-
clarifies, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, we don't want something is our ideal that we don't want Node update Node to be a thing? Is that like what we're trying to get at, or
Well,
something
that
like
would be, yeah, that's an example of what that solves, right? Is that you don't update yourself, and we don't have to cram more things into the Node binary or the Node distribution to provide an easy way for people to install those other things, right?
Yeah, so the goal here is to have something outside of the Node binary itself that does this work.
Right, and it manages more than just Node. It can manage Node, a package manager, or other things. If that makes sense.
But why would there be any benefit in having a cert tool, or a second, let's say, next to Node, and that would just be there for installing and updating it? Because then you need it one way or the other. So if we want to have Node, it could also be built into Node.
I think it's because you don't want all the different things built in necessarily.
Yeah, so you get back to basically recreating like a package management ecosystem. And you run into the same problems which NPM, I guess, tried to break out of, which is like things like Homebrew or other package managers which have sort of gated ecosystems where you have to, the publishing experience is gated. That was sort of unlocked with that strategy, I would say. But also, I just wanted to get back to, I know there was a sentiment here that we were all on the same page around reproducibility. I think there's two different types of situations we're talking about for the tooling, like the tooling for Node and distributing Node, and then the tooling for projects, right? So like my project's dependencies and are those reproducible? I know that there are people today that use NPM to install Node, but it's not Node, it's the Node that's on the NPM registry, right? And they're able to define it and lock it in and use it, right? So there are ways in which, that package manager is able to help you manage your version of Node today. So anyways, that's again getting to the solution, but what's the goal like we're trying to solve for there if we were to build something? If we were, and I would also be concerned about like the scope of that something that we build, right? Because are we going to allow you to manage your Python dependencies?
Hopefully not. But no, that's a very important thing. And I think that's why we have to, so we explicitly don't want we don't want the Node project to be shipping a dependency manager that enables you to install Python dependencies. Like that is like explicitly a non-goal, right?
Reproducibility equals container.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, perfect. So Python is a mess. Okay, it's Node GIP. So if you install Node with our installer and you have Python and you have default Python, it does not. You don't have a system that builds native add-ons right now by default on Mac. It's yeah, no, I mean it's bad. Okay, I'm not saying it's good, but it's the situation is, and then a lot of newbies and staff do not know how to fix this. Okay, they see, oh, my build is failing, and they open an issue on a module, and then the module author will want to throw rocks at whoever created the mess, and the people that can probably fix some of the mess is in this room. So just pointing out that doing something with Python, it's probably something that we have to do. Okay, even if it's just checking, is Python configured correctly? And if not, this is the docs that tells you how to do that. Okay, because right now it just throw with a very odd error, say, oh, Python is not available, and then you have just installed Python. And you end up in this conundrum of this is not there. So I'm just saying, having a check on Python is a dependency, so you need to have Python, or you might not have Python, and then we ship node.gip.js, and then we are good. But
yeah, as it is today, I think what we would like to get to though is so technically JIP is so I don't know why the mics have gotten all funky.
Sorry, I'm trying to contact the AP people.
Oh, okay, cool. Maybe we just need to.
Maybe we depend on the ceiling mic for now
Should
while
I
doing this.
Should I like walk over here and then see it? Yeah, so it's the like feedback from the speakers.
Only use one mic.
Oh, okay. Do we have the other one on?
Turn off the other mic while the one is on. Oh,
Yeah, okay.
So,
If
they're near each other, great feedback.
So Python in this case actually is a dependency of Node.jip. So the version of Python that we require is directly dependent on the version of Node.jip we are installing with. I have that correct, right? I'm looking.
The version of Node.jip will change where it looks for Python. So like there's, depending on if there's a new version of Python, that one might then be, the one that's going to look for first, because Python can be aliased to like Python 3 or just Python. So I forget the explicit order, but it'll look for it in different places, but it doesn't attempt to install it. Is that what you were saying?
I wasn't necessarily saying either way, but yeah, okay, thanks for I think the explanation matters. The point I wanted to make with that was, I'm not sure we can ask users, especially newbies, to declare a dependency on a specific range of Python versions, because it is actually hidden from them by this. Actually, that's the whole point that I was trying to make. So if we're talking about managing a check for Python, we probably need to think a little bit about like, what does that look like to a newbie user? Like, they don't know. So we need to like make a good decision for them, I think. Yeah, I don't know if you had. No, okay. Yeah, I think sorry. We are, I changed. Well, so one thing we're not quite at the break, are we? Sorry. Yeah, so maybe we'll push through 10 more minutes and then, okay.
Maybe try to.
Yeah, so what I was gonna maybe recap here, I think do we have consensus on the goals being reproducible builds? Oh, for who? We haven't really talked about for who. That's a good point.
Is it for the project? Is it for my project?
So yes, right. So let's talk actually maybe a little bit higher level before we talk about the goals that I was about to recap. But so scope here, I think it is for end users. That's the way I've been thinking about it. Chuck, do you want to say disagree?
I brought up the Python example, right?
So how does that just change the for who question?
Because
we need a mic. You need a mic.
Because it increases the scope beyond, let's say, JavaScript, right? So if we're trying to solve that problem for projects broadly, development projects, then the scope kind of like blows out. It's like best left for containers. I'll skip to the end and just say containers. But I think that the leap there is that, and I hear it said a lot, is like we are concerned about the newbie persona, right? Like we are concerned about that, like person that doesn't know about this and doesn't know how to contain their environments and doesn't know, and so like reproducibility is great. And most teams actually have that or have their environments locked down because they have smart folks like us, in their organizations. But, there's a lot of people out there that don't have folks like us. So what's the on-ramp to getting them a similar kind of experience and not having their projects break because they have the wrong thing executing against them, right? So is there a tool that we could build that helps that? I think that probably the answer is yes. I don't know if necessarily the current tooling that we have addresses that problem specifically. So
I agree that I'm not sure it does, but I think then we need to add the stipulation that one of our explicit goals is to do this without, how would you phrase it? To do this within it's on, to do it within the development context that the Node project controls, or so. I'm not sure exactly how to word this, but like, if the Node project's recommendation for reproducible builds is use Docker, I think we've made a mistake. Like, I don't think that's a viable answer. I think people need reproducible builds locally on their machine with just the things that come in the Node, whatever the recommended Node install path is. Like, that should give you default reproducible builds, ideally.
So one of the things I want to point out is the user experience is slightly different depending on what platform you're on. And it sounds like a lot of things people are talking about on Mac specific. On Windows, it's really weird. So Windows, we have an installer. We have a Mac installer as well. But on Windows, we actually have, there's a link through to Chocolatey to install Python and some Visual Studio component. And I don't know, I kind of get the feeling it's probably not perfect, but it's different. And it's completely different from the other platforms where it is the one place where we are trying to install some of that build tooling for you. Again, it's from a sort of, different place and that, but it's a bit weird because you come to it and then depending on what platform you're on, you get a different user experience. And even things like, I know Matthijs talked about like global installs for NPM. On Windows, it's different. On Windows, NPM will look in your app data folder for global install modules. So you don't have the permissions problem that you have on the Unixes. If you have your global install on the Unix platform and you're not running as a root or sudo user, you probably can't globally install packages because it's going into the wrong it's going into a prefix you don't have write access to. So I don't know if that's something we need to look at some point, which is the fact that you don't actually have a consistent user experience depending on what platform you're coming from.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a great thing to list as a goal, is to have a consistent cross-platform user experience. Well, I think that. Does anybody, like, I guess somebody could probably make an argument, probably a pretty good argument, that it should be different too, though. I don't know, right? Like, I guess that if you're like meeting users where they are, right, and not trying to force them into your own thing, and like say they're just a really proficient Windows, they run their Windows servers, and that's just like they live in that world, we probably want to provide them something that is close to the experience they already are familiar with. So maybe there is some value in saying, actually, we explicitly want to provide a best-in-class experience for these platforms, and those don't necessarily have to be the same experience on all of the platforms. It's whatever that platform is best suited for. In Windows, it's an installer that gives you a nice GUI and some, checkbox. Yes, I want to install NPM, maybe, like, whereas that is not what a Mac, an OS X user would expect, right? They don't expect that kind of installer usually. Oh, maybe they do, actually. I don't know. I'm not trying to dictate. I don't expect it. So I guess I was trying to speak from that. But so do we think that having a consistent user experience is a important goal?
Yeah. Maybe it's better defined as improving the consistency, reducing the differences between OSs. I don't think we should aim for 100% consistency, but consistency is good in general.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess then to bring it back and do the recap, we think reproducible builds are very important. We think that we can do a better job of providing tooling that achieves reproducible builds directly from the Node project. Darcy, you just made a face.
I'm always thinking.
I know. Do you want to say something? No. Okay. Yeah, reproducible builds are important. Consistency in the user experience is important to us. And lastly, I think the idea here is that we have consensus that we think we can ship some level of tooling that helps improve this, that the Node project owns the experience of. Do we actually think that it's important the Node project owns the experience? Because we don't own the experience for NPM, and yet we ship NPM, right? So I'm not sure that's actually a requirement. Maybe nice to have. Yeah, folks have thoughts.
Michael has his hands up.
Oh, Michael, maybe first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the consistency part is one thought is like, while we may want like you know, the world class or like, you know, leading class thing that matches each platform, we haven't managed to find people and resources over time who've been willing to like help with the Windows installer, the Mac installer, like that's been a challenge. So maybe one thing which works the same across all of them, we might have a better time actually managing to do.
First.
Yeah, I guess I could add that we should also think that there are quite a few projects who don't depend on native add-ins, and they have different needs on that side, because the exact version number doesn't matter that much anymore, and or you don't even need Python to run your JavaScript, which is amazing. So yeah, it's also like, I guess also that's on for this use case where users of Corpac are quite happy with the tool, because it's the other set of problems is just none really existent for them. So yeah, just wanted to point out it's different groups of users that we want to support.
Yeah, and I was just going to speak to what you were doing there, Wes, in terms of wrapping up consensus, in terms of the experience that we want for folks. If we want to build dependency management tooling into Node core or into a tool that we own, then yes, we should probably consider how that runs up against existing tools, including NPM.
I think do we think we agree on what it means to use the phrasing you just used to what was the exact phrasing, to include package management features, dependency management in Node?
I personally think it's too broad and too deep of a space for this, like, and there's already a lot of competition in the space. So I just don't know the value that we will bring to the table, and if it doesn't divert attention away from building a great runtime. And I think that is the concern that I've maybe seen others bring up, where like our time could be used on improving other aspects of this, and then allowing, you know, somebody else to pick up that bag.
Yeah, so to me, what I'm reading that as is we maybe want the goal to be that the Node project picks a winner and doesn't build a winner. Is that, I mean, I'm trying to like figure out a concrete takeaway for like this part of the conversation is like, what are we hoping to achieve here? And what I'm hearing you say is maybe Node shouldn't build it and own it. Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, I was going to think, like, I think it's drawing the line, right? Like I didn't think we were talking about, and I guess it's because like we already ship NPM, like wanting to get into the business of managing your application components, but like what we need is that bootstrap that says like, I got nothing on my machine, I need to install Node. That's great, but that's not quite enough. Like we need Node and a package manager. So we, you know, that thing could get those two things onto your machine. And I don't know, maybe there's a third one that says like, hey, you know, I want internationalization data, something like if we ever extracted that stuff. But it's more like, in my mind, dealing with that bootstrap to get you enough on your machine so you can then install your application, not installing your application itself, right? Like that's the next step, which I think Darcy was kind of getting at, there's already tools to do that. There's multiple different ones, and that's not necessarily the business of Node. It's important that it's easy, but that's almost like a solved problem by many different things. So we shouldn't be trying to replicate that.
I appreciate that distinction, Michael, and also just saying like we should draw a line if we do want to make it easier to install the package manager and the Node version and manage those two things and make it very clear these are the only two things we're going to install. We have a subset of, it's just like it has to be very clear what the criteria is, because otherwise, like the potential for the dependencies you want to be available or the asks that will come from the community is infinite. So we've already seen this happen.
I think we
if
have
I
a
could-
pretty, oh, go ahead.
If I
Yeah.
could just interject, I just joined the issue had right now is the start time. So I don't know if anyone else is about to join, but someone pasted a link with time zone conversions that I guess is not quite correct. But anyway, hello.
Oh, thanks for the call out. Sorry, we went off the spreadsheet time, I believe, so I'm not.
Currently, we are having a break. We're supposed to have a 10-minute break right now.
Okay, so we're having a 10-minute break. So we are gonna start that break, I think. And then we will pick up again with the second half where we're gonna talk way more about what we're actually gonna try to work on. Yeah, but I think we're taking a break now and then we can finish the notes. Okay, cool. Okay, break? Oh, you're at an out.
Can someone share the link to this hack pad so I could read what the notes are so far?
I can paste that again in the.
Yep.
Small announcement, the security release is out. So we did it.
Small announcement.
Oh, I found it. Never mind.
Currently, you are breaking everything.
Small big announcement.
I think that's a pretty good list of, I think we.
Yeah, but I missed your last, if you want to fill the minutes, I missed your last comment there. But what do I pay you for?
Oh.
Big cards on that. Come on.
Darcy, you were waiting for that for the past, what, 18 months?
Picks up on the table and just said like, no, this is my corner office. It's work. Wow.
18 months you're waiting for that. In 18 months.
Just kidding.
Safety and work.
This guy should be fired. You're the same.
Oh, is that, oh. It's
Congratulations.
Sorry.
Down to.
I'm harassing you. I'm harassing you.
You're following him.
Because I was trying to follow the dots, because I think I use it really. There's nothing to it. But that's like have an agreement. Move on the conversation, right? So then trying to kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
No worries. Now I need to link my.
That's the whole like conversation thing. Like to say, use a tool that fits it.
No, but it may not be accessible, and we could own a tool that executes and manages. Like, that doesn't,
manages, put the binaries up.
I mean,
Most of them should be able to install it.
well, I mean, okay, that's your thoughts on it, but like,
So
that's like.
the binaries.
like the
We're
package
basically saying-
managers could implement it.
Website.
The package managers could implement.
But it's essentially saying.
Download those. I suppose the
Disagree
key thing is NVM does both. It does
Want to build
downloads
tooling
binaries.
that helps with projects. Dependency management.
Yeah, so NVM.
So I think the worry, my worry about Node doing a dependency management thing is that people are gonna hear that and think. People are, it's drop NPM and Node is gonna rebuild package manager. So I just am worried.
we can still decide actually what are we going to do with Node at the moment with the scripts. When we have Node run, it's actually one part of the package managers is moved into Node. And we do that with modules. We do that with a lot of things that we integrated slowly into Node directly. And that is probably going to happen with more features that the package managers currently provide over time, because it all has to be maintained. Someone has to deal with those things. And there's a process involved, how people move over.
We are sorry.
It's always a good start. Yeah, and it's a very
Point of order.
so starting.
We're starting.
If you want to just make your point on the mic.
Break is over.
Make your point on the mic. This is your, you get we're kicking it off.
Okay, so if Matteo kills me, it's on the mic. I mean, Antoine. So like what Matteo was saying, the thing with the core pack and it's being included now and removing it will break for 99% of the users is the fact that they can install Yarn and npm, or whatever it's called. PNPM. And the other things that core pack brings, which I think are good and important, etc., the pinning versions, etc., is not something that users use today. I think they should, but they are not. So yeah, let me just finish. So in terms of user, experience right now, what core pack is bringing is installing Yarn and PNPM easily, which you can also do in npmi Yarn or npmi PNPM, if we disregard the current core pack situation.
That's actually more like, I mean, that's about having an experimental feature that you have to activate. That's the current state. It's like still not there where we want to have that feature yet. And we have to make sure that it provides all the basic functionality that we are happy to enable it by default. Then it provides a benefit over the current situation.
And so, good segue into that experience. Are we going to talk about what that experience is? Is that like, so that's what I was hoping for us to pivot into.
What about goal setting? Are we good with that?
Sorry, say that again.
The goal setting from
Mike.
Yeah, just what should we give Jeffrey a chance to comment on what we talked about in the last session? Since
That's probably also a good idea. Jeffrey, did you have any specific questions or things that we've maybe had covered that you'd like a quick recap?
I mean, are there any consensus? I read the HackMD, but
Yeah, so the consensus points we reached is this stuff in red on the screen. So the reproducible builds are important. We should provide tooling for that. Consistency of the user experience. We were specifically talking about consistency of the user experience across platforms there. But I think in general, I think we care that there is a consistent user experience, and then that we can ship some tooling that the Node project, and we put owns there. I think that's where we sort of ended, is does the Node project need to own it? Is that actually the ideal state? Would it be better if, somebody else did? I think that was maybe not quite clarified. But we do agree that doing something in this area is a net positive for the project.
So could I add some comments to some of those? Yeah, you might as well say consistency across the platforms, if that's the point, because I was assuming you were trying to say something about like consistency across package managers or something to that effect. So that would be good to clarify. Something that's important to me is that I don't want Node to get involved in like politics. Like I don't want us, I mean, yeah, we've kind of already like blessed NPM and V8, which is kind of unfortunate, but I don't want to be repeating that mistake. Like I don't want us to do any further, I don't want people to point to that earlier inclusion as like, oh, well, Node picked a winner once, so therefore we have to pick more winners. Like it's just, like you could argue it's not a slippery slope that we're going to go only this far and stop, but like I just don't think we should go any further than we have, period, because it's just there's no logical place to stop, and it's hard to say no to people, and it's like it's easier to just have a blanket policy that we're just not like going to use our position as being a popular thing that people download as a way of like, injecting other people's software onto users' machines. Like, I just don't think that's something we should be doing.
Can I ask you if that was framed as a trade-off and that we are preferencing user experience over at the cost of picking winners, would that reframing of it change your opinion at all? Does that make sense? Does my question make sense? Because my point is
mean,
here, I
isn't
think
what you're saying just
picking
another
winners
way
is
of
a good
saying that?
thing, is what I'm saying. Picking winners is a good thing. We need to pick
Yeah,
winners.
but
We are the
arguably
right
we've
people
already
to pick
done
winners.
that,
Right, and we should continue is what I'm saying. Because
So-
it's a good thing for our user experience.
I agree to Wes, and actually we already pick winners all the time. It's not only NPM and V8, it's every library that we bundle at the moment. And we bundle a lot. I mean, really, there are so many dependencies. It starts with libuv. Who cares about libuv as such? We don't have to use it. We could use any other library, but
Yeah,
we
but those
that,
are all
and it
different
means,
because
like,
they're our
this
own
is
dependencies.
having a strong support. Please let me finish. And there is a strong support also from the Node ecosystem for that library, because we are probably the biggest user by far. And if that's the case, it means other users are also going to contribute more to that project. So it's definitely not just like NPM, etc. We cannot come around this. It has to be that way.
I think the difference is that, like, I think with the exceptions of only NPM and V8, maybe I don't know if there are any others, like all the others are hidden from users. They're implementation details that, like, Indici is just supporting fetch, but we could replace Indici with some other implementation of fetch and users would be unaware, or they should be unaware. So that's what I'm getting at, is like, we're not kind of picking, other than these two, which were chosen a very long time ago, we're not picking things to just be like, here, this is a useful piece of software that we think you should use. Arguably V8 is a dependency that we just happen to expose, but NPM is absolutely like, we're not using it as a dependency. It's only bundled because we think it's convenient for users, or back in 2011, we thought it would be convenient for users. So that's what I'm getting at, is like, we've done that for NPM, but I think that's the only case where something's bundled that isn't our dependency. And you can make that argument about anything, like, oh, TypeScript is really useful, we should just ship TSC with us. ESLint is really useful, we should just ship with it. Like, there's just no logical bound for what is useful or not.
I mean,
We did. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the V8 thing. We expose headers for V8. We also expose headers for OpenSSL and zlib. There's a list somewhere of the headers we include in the headers package. People have complained. Some people have tried to use other versions of OpenSSL and found that the headers we've got conflict with those. But we do surface some of the dependencies which you may consider are internal things, but we are exposing them to people to write native add-ons against, because we include them in the headers, the node headers.
Right, but those are at least our dependencies.
Right, but,
like
I mean,
NPM
but the
is
argument
not a
is that,
dependency.
we have picked those and exposed those to the users. It's not just an internal. It's not something we could just like replace without people noticing.
Sure. I mean, I don't think we don't really need to discuss like internal dependencies at all. That's not like the scope of this. The question is, like, NPM seems to be the only non-dependency that we just bundle because we think it's useful. I don't so here, let me finish. I don't think we should be doing that any further. Like, we probably shouldn't have done it for NPM, but that's a long time ago now. But B, something I pointed out somewhere else was, like, I really like the install page for PMPM because it just lists like 15 different ways to install PMPM, and it doesn't take a position on them. It's like, if you want to, here's our standalone installer, here you can install with any, you know, these dozen different package managers. Here's how to install it via core pack, etc. This is kind of a way that we can like kind of bridge the gap, is like we have a download page on the Node website. It can have recommendations for, well, recommendations, or maybe keep it neutral like PNPM, where like here's how to install it with any version manager that can install Node. Here's how to install it via every package manager that anyone can find, you know, that supports us. Here it is. We can also do that and specifically recommend 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. But that I feel like is a much better approach. Like if we feel the desire that we want to push users in a particular direction, and we feel that that's something that should be in our scope of making this recommendation to push users toward, like, for example, to push users to NPM by bundling it, or to push users towards something else by recommending it, I would rather do so in the documentation than in bundling stuff, you know, because the documentation can have all the nuance that bundling doesn't, and have lots of variations and so on, and talk about the trade-offs between one thing or another. And then we
So-
keep our download as small as it can be.
Joey?
Hugh, I think that one is.
Okay. Can I just want to interject. I think we fundamentally do not have consensus on the points you made, Jeffrey. Just to be clear, I don't think that is a consensus opinion.
That's fine. Then we should discuss that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant, is like, yes, let's continue to discuss that.
But I just wanted to say that the perspective that we don't depend on NPM, I think is a bit fuzzy, because like we do depend on NPM in the sense like all of the other packages which are part of our distribution, we need a way to install those and all those sorts of things. But also like we have other dependencies like Python, for example, which Python is not used in any of our code anywhere, but we have to have Python installed. Like it's not a clear-cut case of like we don't use this in our code, therefore it shouldn't be part of the distribution. Lots of reasons that it should be, or at least something in that category should be. Like,
so
as was already explained, like the developer experience aspect is of value. There is other things that are of value.
Overall, and the user experience and things like Deno has made Deno popular with other people, like with people who originally been in the Node.js ecosystem, and they switched for a reason, because they want to have things simple. They want to have things and just there and handy. And we have to accommodate these needs, because if we don't, then Node.js does not exist at a later point, because a different project is going to be opinionated about things, and it is going to make things easier. Also, what was brought up, for example, about like TypeScript. Well, we did discuss with a TypeScript team if it makes sense to include it into Node.js. It was actively decided not to because of version reasons, etc., and that there are difficulties around that. I don't remember the specifics anymore, but there were good reasons why we said, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense, at least from the current standpoint on. Things could change, who knows? And like all these things are about making user experience better. I believe we have to do that. We don't get around it.
Michael, you're up.
Yeah, I guess just on that first thing, like I think I agree and kind of disagree is that like just because some other runtime has done something doesn't mean it's the right choice for Node. But at the same time, we do need to look at things and figure out what is it that it's important for us to do, and do those things. But it's a trade-off, because like the original thing I wanted to point out is like, in particular, bundling comes with a pretty significant cost, right? Like from my perspective, one of the reasons I could see us not choosing to bundle more things is like every time we bundle something, we have a bigger surface for vulnerabilities, CVEs, having to do more security releases. And so like that significant cost has to really be justified in terms of, you know, improving things that we think matter for like the end users and our future success, balanced by what we can actually afford to do, right? Like if we just package everything in the world into Node, obviously we can't support that, right? So finding the right line and choosing the things that really matter is going to be important versus just like, hey, well, somebody else has done this. It's got to be like, we're doing this because we think it's important for our specific users. We can afford to do it. And it, will ensure the success of Node going forward as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think even going to the like technical priorities list, we definitely put user experience, I think, as the number one, right? Like that is above even maintainer. If I recall correctly, like end user experience is above the Node project being able to maintain itself. It's above performance. It's above a lot of other concerns for a reason. And I think that it is very clear that a page with 30 options is not the good user experience. And a single paved way to do it is. Like I'm surprised that's controversial, actually. Like it wasn't controversial, I don't think, before you expressed this, Jeffrey. So I'd love to maybe like dig in there. Is this a point of contention that we're gonna have to battle out early on here, or are we?
I think though that we shouldn't be making all choices for all people, right? Like, so again, that comes back down to there might be some places where it makes sense for us to do that, but not, I don't think as a general case of saying we're going to come up with one paved path has been our approach. It's been more supporting the ecosystem to innovate and do different things. And only in specific places where it's really going to make a difference should we consider something like that.
I think this goes back to something Richard was saying in terms of meeting users where they are, and it's going to be very tough to create consistent, not tough, it's impossible for you to reproduce the same experience across different platforms. So people are going to have different, and to accommodate everybody's use cases. So I think that's kind of like, I think maybe, and I don't want to put words in just mouth, but what he was mentioning there with the PNPM's docs, I think was just the encouraging all the different methods in which you can self-serve, and that was a benefit, and enjoyed that. And I think that's similar to what we're doing with Node today in terms of providing options for you to install it on your platform with whatever tool you want. And then trying to say that we're going to be able to somehow create a single user experience for that, does all these things, I think is going to be super, it's impossible.
Yeah, I would add that also folks choose different tools, exactly because they have different need, goal, and so forcing a consistent experience is of course not a goal, but enabling it maybe is.
So I think we should then clarify here. There is a difference between forcing the same experience and having a experience for somebody who doesn't necessarily have those opinions, right? Like we can do both. We can have a page that you land on that's like advanced installation options, and it goes through like the 20 million different ways. And I think that adds value no matter what, whatever we choose on the other side. But at the same time, there is a segment of our users who are coming in and saying, oh my God, there's too many choices here. Just tell me what to do, right? And those are the people that we'd be serving with this tooling. It is not the person who comes in with like a bunch of opinions and 10 years of experience shipping Node to production. Like those people already have it figured out. The segment of users we're trying to solve problems for here is the folks who do not have that, right? It's not just beginners, but it's also just people who are like, I just don't care. Like I've been doing this for a long time and I just want you to stop changing things underneath me, right? Those people also would be served by this tooling, because then they wouldn't have this, page of 20 options that they don't really care about, and they're probably just going to pick the first one, right? Like the first one that works for them out of the box.
Can I just respond to this?
Yeah.
So I think this is more of a design question, right? Like if you look at the new website that just launched, which is beautiful, it already has a bunch of like smart stuff to only show the user what's relevant. Like the user picks their platform, like they're on Windows, and so then it's not going to show like brew instructions and so on. So we're already doing a pretty good job at like filtering down the data to be only showing them what's relevant. Like it's kind of the kind of what I was kind of imagining, like what we discussed somewhere was like in terms of what binaries we create, we would right now we just create like basically one with some weird exceptions about Windows, etc. But we for the most part we just create one binary that has Node and npm in it, right? We would start creating two, which is what we currently do, and then the same thing but without npm. And then the download page would have basically two broad options. One would be like the simple click here to download button, and that downloads the binary that we have today with npm. But the other one would be here are instructions with, say, a few recommended package managers, and then maybe we list like some other page has the other 15 that could, or 35 or however many more there possibly could be. But the instructions that involve installation via some kind of version manager could be like, here, step 1, install Node via version manager, and it installs the binary that's just Node. Step 2, install whatever package manager you want via a version manager, and then that can install npm or it can install something else. It can install Corpac, which installs whatever. But then it's like you've kind of solved this problem. Like you have the just click here approach for the people who want that, but then, we have the way to do recommendations and provide other alternatives to people.
But we don't have this. I mean, the problem is we don't have a way to define that per package, and we don't have a way to install it per package or per project is what we want to call it, right? So like I understand that that's fine for installing your system level node without any other, you get one, but that's just not how people work. So that's
No, that
the
would
gap we're trying to fill.
The idea would be that this would be installation via a version manager. So like step 1 would be choose your version manager, whether that's NVM or NVM plus Corpac or whatever other type of combination. Step 2 would be installing Node and then installing a package manager with that version manager.
I just don't think that's a good user. I think that we can do a better user experience than that, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, I think we can do here is a curl bash that gets you bootstrapped. And from there on out, you CD into your project and you have what you need. Like, I think that's the user experience that Corpac does for package managers. I think we want that for Node. I think that's a better user experience than here's, 4 options. Anyway, Antoine.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we should at least consider making something as good as Corpac or better if the goal is to use another tool.
Yeah, because we would be by doing that approach, we'd be taking away Corpac and not giving them an option, right? So at that point, we would be, I mean, if we go that route,
Corpac could be one of the options. That's like, there was an issue opened against the website saying that like we shouldn't be pushing people to download, via the button by default, because like we should be recommending people install Node via version manager, So it's sort of like, well, if we're going to do that, then that should be the primary thing. Like if you go to the download page, that should be the primary thing. Maybe we also have the download button somewhere, but like the first recommendation should be what we actually recommend, which is install via version manager. And yeah, as part of that, it means installing the version manager itself if you don't have it on your machine. So like, I'm not saying it would have to be Brew. The version manager could be NVM or it could be Volta or, one of many of the other ones. We could have instructions for installing that version manager and then installing Node via the version manager. But I think there's a lot of benefit. I mean, if that is what we recommend, I think a lot of people would say that we want people to be using Node through a version manager, and also package managers. So we should just guide them through setting that up. If that becomes a curl command that sets it all up for them in one shot, fine. But like we could start with designing it as a web page, and then like if there seems to be one obviously best solution or a handful of best solutions to make into curl one shots, then we can just add that.
Is it on now? Okay. One thing I wanted to say is that I do see a lot of benefit in like a curl one-shot solution that sets stuff up how we want. Something that the NPM team has done a lot of work in is to, and failed in some ways, is aligning major versions with Node. And there's been a lot of discussions around those. So anytime that there's an NPM major version, we've tried to coordinate it in Node with a way that like the breakages we make are acceptable. And there's always people in the release issue commenting later saying like this, XYZ broke me because NPM changed in some way. So I do think having one tool that we control that manages these things does reduce maintenance burden in the long run, or can, depending on how it's designed. And so I do think that pointing people to a bunch of different solutions is going to increase maintenance burden in the long run.
I think Darcy's going to share something.
When you get a chance to look at it, that stuff again. But yeah.
Yeah, so we have never really moved past the goals phase of this discussion yet. So I'm unsure that we should until we decide this, right? Like this is the most pressing thing. Do we?
I'm fine with the whole meeting being goals. That's fine.
Okay, so if we had a proposed single recommended path, whether that was something Node shipped or one of the version managers fits our criteria, and we recommend that, would that be a consensus point that we all have? Like, is that a good, like, 'cause even Jeffrey, that sounds like you would be satisfied with that outcome.
So like, I mean, like we've been looking to see if something already exists out there. I think we found two that were possible. I haven't tried them. Those ASDF and MISE. Like if we test them out and they actually work and they work in all the platforms, and they could be like this single version manager can manage both Node and package managers, and we can create a curl command to install the package manager if it's not already on the machine, and then tell that package manager, or tell install the version manager if it's not already on the machine. Have that version manager then install Node and whatever well, I guess you'd have to, if it's a single curl command, it would install the latest Node and the latest NPM. So you might need multiple curl commands if they want
maybe
something
into
else.
the weeds.
But yeah, if that's all possible, and if it's not ASDF or MISE, but something that we create that's, equivalent in functionality, sure. I think that would satisfy, but I think it might not be one command, because the one command would have to be probably like, with NPM. So you'd probably have a set of commands, like if you want latest Node plus NPM is this command, latest Node plus yarn is this command, etc.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit in the weeds, and I am not sure that necessarily like. Let's assume that we can come to a technical conclusion on these feature sets. Like, just let's assume it is not technically impossible, because I'm pretty sure it's not technically impossible.
Sure.
Assuming that, do we have consensus as a group that we would like to ship a single recommended experience to install the things you need to get set up with your Node project? Like, does that to me seems like a pretty baseline. We've agreed that on that. Yeah, nobody's saying no, so.
Well, I mean,
I
the
think you're
things you
gonna-
need to use your Node project is a pretty vague term, but if what you mean by that is runtime plus package manager, I guess.
But I think it's the challenge is until there's some proposal of what would be in or out of that, people who might object because they're not, like, their favorite tool is not included, don't know whether to object, right? Like,
So is there something we should do as a pre-work step to get those people involved to see if they would object early? Like one other thing I've mentioned this in a couple of these conversations. We today only ship NPM, right? So actually the only thing that is a hard requirement is that whatever we ship to do this, the NPM team agrees with, because that was a big blocker to Core Pack going on by default, is the NPM team says, no, we do not agree to be shipped this way. So do we actually, is there a requirement that we get Yarn and PNPM's approval on what we're going to recommend? Is that something that should be part of our goals here? That like they have to agree to it?
I don't think so, but I think even among Node collaborators, like a large part of the context that's gone into this discussion is that, you know, NPM is unfairly advantaged by being bundled in, and the like, so us coming up with a new script that says like, here's how you install everything, and it still has one choice, will still face those same concerns. You know, I think we've agreed.
So
we
like the
discussed what we've
ASDF
agreed.
maintainers is like who you're talking about there would be like if we chose NVM and the ASDF maintainers came and said, you just killed our project. Is that what
Right,
that
exactly, right? Like, you know, so the whole thing that I think part of the whole thing that kicked off the discussion was the concern about choosing a single, like making it so that like, hey, here's the winner, you should use this one. We've got a lot of history, so you know, we've agreed we're not going to remove NPM, but like, would we do it so that we've chosen one in the future? You know, I don't know. And you know, I can understand people not jumping up and saying, well, wait a sec, but I also have a feeling that there's still going to be people who have concerns about that. For that particular reason, right? Like trying to avoid repeating the, hey, we're choosing one versus others. I know it's hard to balance versus the, how do we make it really easy for somebody who doesn't want to choose, but.
I mean, I thought we had hashed that out and established that we are picking a winner. Like, that's why we made a doc that says we're not removing NPM. I thought that was what that point of that conversation was to a line that says like, yes, we understand it's not perfect, but this is the direction we're picking.
No, I think it was because of history. We don't want to break everybody who depends on it, and so we're not going to take it out. But it's not like a precedent to say we'll do this, you know, in other contexts.
So overall, we have the situation of user experience, and we can not remove NPM. I would like to push that out of the discussion. That's not what we have to discuss here. But what can we do to improve the situation for users? We have a significant percentage of users that want to use Yarn, that want to use PNPM. There are probably other package managers, but they are not as strongly used. And we, as the technical steering committee or as the Node.js collaborators and people from the ecosystem, we do have to see what our users care about. We have to decide what we want to include. And I personally am super happy to improve even just the situation for at least 5% of the users. That is already significant if we improve the situation for those. So yes, I would pick any winner that would be above 5% usage of the ecosystem if I see a statistic like that, and accept it to be included one way or the other, to be easier accessible. Because, and like, we shouldn't talk about core pack. It's the implementation detail, how it is there. It is more about like that when you run Yarn, it is available. It is just there without having to install it explicitly. You are probably going to be asked, hey, do you really want to install this the first time? We can all put together requirements for that. We can put together security requirements and other things that users that have to apply before it is going to execute for the first time. But afterwards, it's all good. Improving the user experience, let's put that first. I mean, why do we discuss that even?
I think I think we all agree we want to improve the user experience. What I think there might be disagreement on is that removing one command, npm install yarn, is improving it enough to take on a significant burden to the project, right? Like it's that trade-off of like, does that really improve the user experience versus the cost of, you know, for example, if we bundled it in, we would now have more security releases, we'd have a bunch more work, and like, so I think that's where, like, I don't want to answer like what the right answer is, but that's an area I think that we don't necessarily have agreement on either.
But this is why I think that trade-off oh, this is not on. That trade-off discussion depends specifically on where the value is. And I think we were saying there is extreme value in managing even more around this setup user experience, right? So there's a lot of value there, whereas there's maybe not enough to justify the core pack current state. I think we've all pretty much agreed that like the current state core pack can't justify itself because it is just a npm-g install yarn replacement, right? So like that, the trade-off is not there. But I think we are pretty clear. Hey, look, I'm saying that that's my personal opinion. Okay. I should be clear there. But that is not a consensus point we have reached consensus on. But I do think we have way more value with a more holistic thing than core pack has on its own. And so I think that's where we've gone to the, I think we've gone into the tipping point of saying, yeah, it would justify making those type of commitments. And even though we're not talking about bundling, so we're not taking on that, or we are currently not talking about bundling. Maybe we would in the future, but just picking here is the recommended install path as a third-party tool in the ecosystem even provides value and doesn't have a major negative cost associated for the Node project specifically. Clearly, picking NVM has a negative cost for ASDF, but do we need to care? Does the Node project need to be concerned with that? And my opinion is no. And I think we should make the decisions that are best for the users, our direct users, which would be, I think, picking a winner. Yeah, Jeffrey's next, I think.
Yeah, I think like I think that's then the thing is like we've been operating under this assumption that like we can't change anything about how Node is installed, but that's like a clear way we can address these concerns is like if users want more flexibility in what gets installed with Node, like to say install Node with Yarn, say, and have that be the only package manager, like we can solve that problem. We can provide a way to do that, whatever technical way it is, if curl or something else, interactive installer. Like if that's like that could be a goal that we're agreeing to. We want to provide users a way to install Node with the package manager of their choice. Like, okay, if we can find agreement on that goal, then sure, then we can move on to like, okay, so let's look at the various approaches for installations and see what, the best options look like. There is one other thought I had, which was that I'm really excited to see dev engines progressing. There is the case where the user doesn't know what they need. Like the user doesn't know that they need Yarn for a particular project, or doesn't know what project they're eventually going to use. And so at install time, they might not know which package manager or managers they may need to get. Something we could do is have Node itself read dev engines. And if it mismatches, like, well, I guess Node would only be reading the runtime. But anyway, what I was thinking was like if all the package managers read, the package managers should all read dev engines, and would say, like, oh, I'm the wrong package manager for this project, but here's how you get the right one, and just prints the command for the other one or something to that effect. Then that kind of is the best of both worlds. It's like the user knows exactly what to do. They fix their problem with one command, but we don't have to take on all this extra security burden and maintenance burden of shipping things.
So
Darcy's up.
yeah, so it might sound crazy, but like, why can't Node be distributed on NPM?
Well, it is actually.
Well, not really, but yes and no. And I would love to get that namespace gifted back to the project. And I had looked at it before I left, and there's still people in this room that could help with that if that was something serious we took. But I say that because all the package managers today all distribute themselves in that registry. And so there's a common place and source and origin to reference for any tooling that could have a common understanding about where these things live. And then we can build tools that apply to all of them. And when you start to think of it that way, you start to think, oh, all these things are just dependencies for my project. Like in the persona, and if I put on my user hat, I'm a developer hat when I'm building projects, like Node is a dependency to my project, just like my package manager actually is a dependency to my project. Just like my other dependencies and other tools that I might prefer to manage my dependencies, whether that's ESLint or TypeScript or anything else, might be dependencies. And so that's, I've just always thought it was weird that we weren't distributing in that ecosystem where the rest of the ecosystem is sort of distributing. And I thought it was an opportunity, and still think it's an opportunity to sort of like coalesce and have a more straightforward way of distributing the project. But there might be specific, and the release folks will know there might be specific limitations or issues with that. So
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to get at with like having Node read dev engines would be like, hey, you just opened this project. Here are the dependencies you need to install, and here are the commands you've run to install them. Like, I don't, whatever that, I don't know how to implement that in a technical level, but like, that's ultimately like having people have ahead of time the right Node runtime and package manager is one thing, but like they might not choose at install time, say the right Node version. They're still going to need to do something when they start working on a particular project. So like, is there some way we can guide them through, here's how to install the dependencies you will need for this project,
So Node is for me a runtime and not a dependency, actually. So for my project, it is whatever is going to make it executable for whatever code I have. So I do see it a little bit different from that side. But coming back to the former aspects, we also, because we spoke about developer burden for us, maintainer burden, and I believe we have people who are willing and to invest their time to maintain these things. So that is not an argument for me. I know people in this room are currently willing to implement features and to our needs, if we say that. Also, arguments about picking things. We sometimes either include ecosystem modules in Node.js, like for example, what would it be like in FSCP? Parse arcs, like so many libraries we have included. Some we build new, like the test runner. We're currently having a test runner, and there are lots of test runners out there. But it's like we are making the user experience better. And I would really, really, really like to agree upon, yes, we want to make the lives of our users better. Can we please agree upon that?
Of course we agree on that, but that doesn't mean anything because it's too vague. Like that's
Okay,
already our first technical priority.
Yeah, I agree, but I think we are saying that the user experience is improved by committing to one of these things. To be clear, I think that's what we're trying to say here. Very concretely, this one use case, we can meaningfully improve by shipping one set of opinions about how you install Node and your package manager. And then we can bike shed what is the mechanism for doing that. But I think we still have not like all said, yes, we agree that shipping something, an opinion here, even if that's a third-party tool that is not bundled with Node, is a good thing. Can we, like, that's, I think, what you were trying to get at, that we should say, yes, we agree to, right? So do we agree to that? We think shipping something there, something. We're
Can
not
you
defining
write
exactly.
down what you want consensus for?
So who is typing? I wasn't sure who was taking notes. Okay. Okay, I was just reading what you were. I know it's going a little bit. So I think the consensus point is that we need to get a group together who is going to ship something. And that could be a decision to preference a ecosystem tool with direct commitment from the Node project that that's our only recommended way. And then there's a bunch of other things that you can do, but like the main thing that we tell a beginner new user is like, here's your landing page. It's this one way. And that is what we're saying the consensus is. And then we can get into all the details about what that actual implementation details look like next. But next is, we're very quickly running out of time. So
let's write down what this specifically is, not saying something like solves these problems, and then I think we can maybe have,
Okay, so
Like-
the concrete thing, this is what the doc that I tried to link, I put in an issue earlier today, by the way. The problem statement. We're getting low on time here and Luke has how much time do we actually have? Are we?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, we need to start wrapping up. Do we have, and then I think you also hit it.
I can technically stall, but just don't stall for too long, like not for
Okay.
another hour.
So we actually didn't get to probably one of the most important things, which was, do we charter the package maintenance group to do this? And that's where we do the conversations going forward? Because like these conversations are obviously not done. We just spent 2 hours and we didn't. even
I don't
get
think
to,
we
like,
can
half the
charter without knowing what we want the group to figure out. So,
Okay, so that's where the proposal that I was drafting fits in. It has a problem statement. I can open that as a PR. I think we just need to move on to what's next steps.
so
we
here, I
have a
can, do
charter.
you want me to, I think I can try to draft what you're trying to say.
Okay,
Okay.
can Luke maybe do his, he's got something.
It dovetails into what are the next steps, but I just wanted to say that I think even talking about dev engines is a little bit like, is just an implementation detail, and we need to figure out what implementation details
One person
we,
talks, can the other person turn off their microphone?
It's turned off.
Turned off.
I think
Okay.
it's the roof or the ceiling mic.
Okay, sorry.
Um,
Just keep this for the AV person, sorry.
I'm just in a bad spot. What was I saying? Yeah, dev engines, and like Wes mentioned before, like seeding into a directory, that should have your npm and node version. Like that's an option, but that is like, I do think that those things should be discussed now. Like we should make those decisions on like if that's something we even want to support, instead of just talking about like, or I mean, as part of talking about what solutions, what problems we're trying to solve and what solutions we're trying to come up with. So I do think next steps, it'd be very helpful to have a pull request or something where we talk about what this tool, if it does end up existing, what tool, like what problems it is going to solve specifically. Like,
Yeah.
will it solve the problem of you are in a directory and you can get the correct version of Node, or is it just going to error if you have the wrong version? Are we just going to rely on dev engines for that and not have that be part of the tool?
Yeah, to be clear, I think we have an issue that I opened today with copying in the thing that I intended to do as a PR, but didn't get a chance to finish, and a charter PR. And the proposal doc that I have been drafting is attempting to answer, I think, both Jeffrey and your points here, which is what exactly do we even mean? And so it actually does try to lay out a user experience of this, and it's very heavily inspired by NVM, which is the most popular, tool in the space. So it sounds like the next step here is to not decide on chartering, but to officially say, we're going to continue all of these discussions in the package maintenance working group before they ever reoccur in Node core PRs. Because that was really one of the things I wanted to get us to, was like, we're having these battle PRs, that needs to stop, right? Like that is unhealthy.
Exactly, yeah.
And so like, we need to somewhere to go to have this conversation.
And we have agreement from, all the parties involved that we punt everything that is happening right now, and we all go work together in that order, because I think that's the important part, right? Like where are the core pack folks like willing to pause everything, like just and work together with this group to propose a different.
So I tried to write down what I think are the goals you were trying to say, Wes. Are these a fair representation of what we think we might have consensus? And do these have consensus?
Another question I would have before we close is, should we maybe set a deadline for the group to come up with something? Because there's also the risk that the conversation stalls indefinitely. And it would probably help everyone if we say, okay, if nothing comes up in time for Node 25, or I don't know, then that's what we do. Like, for example, enabling callback or removing it. Like,
I kind of feel like if you want to make a deadline, that the consequence of missing the deadline is just nothing. It shouldn't be that we ship something that doesn't have consensus.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, like if the deadline is like, if we don't have consensus on something else, or we don't have consensus on core pack, then we just don't ship anything, and this remains an unsolved problem until we have consensus.
I believe there will always be at least one person somewhere out there that doesn't consent to something.
Or
so
not consensus, but like at least a majority vote. You know.
that we always have consensus, and I don't believe we need it always. I believe we have to agree upon it as a group, and there are always majorities, and there's always someone who might not feel super happy with something.
So
anyway, Wes, are these goals
yeah,
what you were having in
they're pretty
mind?
good.
And
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. I think, but again, I want to come back to, I think the next steps here is we just need to delegate this conversation to a package maintenance working group meeting next week. We need to turn these in. Jeffrey, I'll pull your goals. One of my points to take away after this was to pull that into the proposal doc. So the proposal doc's idea is like, let's start from square zero, have a problem statement, what we're trying to solve. I think this kind of helps flush that out a little bit. And then it has a couple of technical, deeper dives where we talk about like prior art and stuff like that. And we have 3 documented approaches. There's actually a 4th that I need to add to, which is binary like link swapping. So that's like the way N works, right? You change directories and it swaps a global link on your path. Anyway, there's like a few like remaining technical details, but I think once that proposal doc has that stuff fleshed out, that we could probably set a target decision date and then just host the conversation in those non-node core PRs. So this would be just like a doc proposal in the package maintenance working group, which historically has meant very little. Like actually, it's like not actually committing to anything. Just to be clear, like we've done these things in the Node 10 the same way. We're not committing to them in the Node 10 next 10 repo. We're just drafting it. And then that turns into a PR to core. So like instead of us having continue like I guess from what I would like to see personally is like close all of the existing issues for now. Disable, enable, remove, all the policy doc things, all of that stuff gets halted conversation and moved into the package maintenance working group. And then we come back when we have a cohesive story. Like that's my proposal here, is like that would be the next step. Dude. That's a lot to end here. Like we're trying to end the meeting here. So like
Much there. I'm not gonna close the PR to FPM report back until
maybe, okay, so maybe not closing, but leaving things as is and moving the conversation. That is valid. Either way, I just want to wrap up on something here. We're at time.
Closing all the PRs.
Okay, that's valid.
I believe that one is a little bit special because it's also about legal things and whatsoever. And do we actually have actual disagreement about it being acceptable to remove that part from core pack at the moment? In case we still work upon the other details as a long goal. And I don't believe that's actually the case. I believe everyone agrees.
We're over time, so yeah. Next steps. So no closing PRs.
Can we not go over time? Are we like, we have to stop at time?
We have the room until 6. That's the absolute cutoff.
Okay.
We have the room until 6. That's the absolute cutoff.
Can we, someone wrote up above, doesn't look like we have consensus. Is that true? Does someone disagree with any of those goals, or do any of them have consensus? If we can scroll up a little.
Oh yeah. Are you screen
I
sharing?
would not feel comfortable writing goals concretely just from the discussion at the moment.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think this is we need to queue up a next discussion.
I thought that was the point of this meeting, was to try to define goals.
It was, but we just spent the whole time talking about them and not coming to consensus.
Well,
so I mean,
I mean, we've got a big group here, so like, does anyone disagree with the first goal? Wait, scroll up a little bit more.
Like I would not feel like I wouldn't feel comfortable at the moment. Like in this is about bike shedding, about wording, about meaning in specific words, and I don't believe it is valuable to do that exactly in a rush now that we have to leave soon.
This is why I think the next step is to take these goals, put them into the proposal, and then move the conversation into the package maintenance working group. And then we just continue from there. And yeah, we probably need to set a timeline and a deadline where we say we're gonna have a goal of a decision by X date or whatever, if that, makes sense. But I think we discussed more goals than even this, I think, in the, right? Because this doesn't include the reproducibility. Like, it's not a clear end state, even if we say, yes, these goals look good, I don't think. So like, it doesn't matter whether we agree on these goals, which I think we do generally, because the next step is still go have more discussions in a non PR format. Right? Like, which is
Well, I think there should be a PR with the goals. So that we can
yes,
finalize
I didn't mean
something.
it not, I meant like we would just have it on the next package maintenance working meeting agenda. We would continue the discussion there and we would bike shed the wording of the goals in the package maintenance working group, not Node Core policy docs.
But that's just not how to.
Okay.
Because then we have more room and we have more time and we're not trying to rush, and I'm sure people's brains are fried. So like people probably want to go, eat dinner. I don't know. Anyway, I just don't want to like hold up. Oh, we have dinner at 6:30. Okay. But like, it feels to me like that's a good conclusion to this, is that we've now hashed out a bunch of the goals. Whether we're in complete consensus or not, we agree that we're not ending the conversation here. I think that's where we're at. It's not necessarily the best outcome from this 2 hours, is it? Look, this is the issue that never ends. So like, I'm sorry that I couldn't, format this in such a way that we came to a conclusion faster, but we just didn't. So here we are. Is there any better? Does anybody have any better ideas?
Just leave it as it is. I'm so tired of it.
Yes.
I appreciate your effort. Thank you, Wes. Excellent job. But yeah, I don't have so much more energy to.
This is why I would like to delegate. And I think the folks who have the energy to continue it should just do that in the package maintenance working group. And then we come back with a coherent plan that we've agreed, that the folks who did participate agreed to, and not have it spread out across 30 issues. We'll come out with one single document that represents the position of the current Core Pack team, the current NPM team, the current people involved in the.
That makes the assumption, sorry. That sounds like a good idea, assuming that we have people that have energy to put into it from all the perspectives. Because if only the Core Pack people, pro Core Pack, have energy to put into it, then that's not very meaningful.
Yeah, I think we're saying that the package maintenance working group has people who are volunteering to put in that effort. I am. That's why I put this session together. I want to move this conversation in to the other.
Sorry, not sure how I'm supposed to raise my hand while screen sharing, but just quickly want to remind people, like, that's what we do. That's what we did with ESM. And we kind of got sorry. But just try not saying that the approach is wrong, but just try not to do some of the not to say mistakes.
Don't assume that the approach is necessarily going to be what solves.
Just be careful. Be careful with this approach and the downside of it. There are upsides, but there are also downsides. Be careful about the downside.
Yeah, that is, we should probably just end on that note. This is what ESM did. Anyway, I think noted, very important that we don't fall into those traps, but I think leaving it in the current state is untenable. We have to make a decision one way or the other. You can't permanently put Core Pack into experimental purgatory. And we don't think that it completely solves the problem. So I think that despite the problems that we could face, I think that is the only next step option. So I think, can we just say, see you next week in package maintenance working group? Nobody's saying no. So I'm gonna take that as agreement.
So everybody's gonna show up?
If anybody who cares,
I
we're going
mean,
to say this is your-
I guess the question would be like anyone who's not going to continue this in the package management group, like you need to speak up. You either need to speak up with like what your priorities and goals are, or just agree to accept whatever that group decides.
This is
So
where the chartering conversation comes in, but
I'll just say personally, like I've definitely put.
sorry.
I'll say personally, I've definitely spent a number of years showing up to that working group. And then most recently, obviously, trying to help navigate some of these things. I feel like I've put most of like the energy I could into it at this point. Like I'm probably gonna like bow out of a lot of conversations with like hopefully to unlock some folks, but also just want to be like mindful that like I've got other priorities. So I'm just like raising my hand that you may not see me in that working group as much going forward, and I definitely was there more, but just want to like in terms of like counting me in, I don't know.
Just to Jeffrey's point there, that those that don't participate just have to follow the decision. I voiced this working group idea with a number of people. I don't want to mention names. And the one thing that came up that people were uncomfortable with is to just accept whatever the working group comes up with. So there we're going to have little issues. That's just, I mean, that's not my opinion, just.
And I think that is a valid opinion, and no decision is binding until we ship it. So like, I think the goal is that we come back to the process of a Node Core PR, and then it can go through all the due process that people want. But the idea is to just stop the current human problems that are surrounding this issue, which is our lack of, working well together in the historic like details here, right? So like, if we can do that human part in the package maintenance working group, then we can come back with a technical proposal that just goes through the same process that it would otherwise, right? Which is like contributors blocking it.
I think we need a goals proposal first.
Sure, that's in yeah, I agree with that. Right, sorry, that's in the issue that I opened this morning. There is a goals section. I need to translate the notes from the meeting here today. But that would be the first deliverable of our little exploration in the package maintenance working group. Once we have the goals, not pulled into Node Core though. So wait, actually, is that what you're trying to differentiate? We should be making a goals.
Like the package group can debate and come up with goals that they think should be our goals, even if they have to vote on it within the package maintenance group. And if it passes there, then it goes up to Node Core and it gets approved, and then at least then it's like, okay, and then that could be the basis of a charter. Like if there's goals approved at the level of the whole project, then some subset can be given the mandate to be like, okay, go achieve these goals.
Okay, I can definitely agree to that. I think that is a viable thing. So we would pursue chartering after we propose a goals document for this domain, whatever we want to call it, version management, whatever. And then we would charter under that. Okay. And then the chartering would include delegating the decision-making power. So a vote, and that's, I think,
because what we'd be delegating would be just the implementation details. Like, yes, we've agreed we want to whatever, come up with an installation method or come up with whatever it is. But like and then how that installation method works and looks and what technologies it uses could be delegated.
Yes, exactly. Okay, cool. I think that is a pretty good consensus point then. So we would say we're not fully delegating the goals of this work. That's, got to be approved first. And then from there, we can then continue the technical discussion, bike shedding as a smaller group who would then be binding decision-making power on the technical implementation details. Okay, yeah.
So does this just leave the current state of the existing tooling in purgatory still? Because we don't know if it actually is a good solution, like it meets the.
Until we land on the goals.
Okay, just wanted to confirm.
Does anybody disagree with that?
We're back to status.
Yeah, status quo.
I mean, personally, I kind of feel like we should remove core pack until unless we decide that that's going to be part of our solution so that people don't continue to depend on it, assuming that that's going to be part of some potential
No,
future
Jeff.
solution. But
Jeff, you're cutting out.
yeah,
I'm just
sure I
kidding,
am.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But whatever. I mean, if we can do the goals work in the next like week or two, then sure. But if the goals work stalls or something,
You might have missed it, because I know you weren't, unfortunately, the timing and everything, Jeff. But Matteo had to leave, but he made some good points at the very beginning of our discussion about, there's real users obviously using this today, and even though it's experimental. So I think.
yeah,
that was
but it's not disappearing. They can just install it.
True.
So
True. I mean, I'm not going. I've done enough. So that's all I'll say.
like no matter what we end up doing, no matter what we end up shipping, core pack will still be there on the NPM registry, and anyone who wants to use it can.
Okay,
So-
how about this? Let's postpone that for the package maintenance working group discussion at the next available opportunity. And we can then make that one of the number one docket items is to decide on a short-term strategy. Can we table that for today?
Yeah,
then?
we don't have to deal with that in the immediate future, but I'm just saying, like, if the goals discussion drags out for months or something, like, it shouldn't just be that core pack just sits as a zombie into node 23 and so on.
Quick point of order. We're in the UK, so when you say table something, it means put it on the table, as opposed to take it off. Okay. Carry on.
Yes, I meant take it off the table temporarily. Okay, so we'll put the first topic of business for the next package maintenance working group will be define a short-term strategy. And then the second topic will be make a goals doc that we can get consensus on with the Node.js. And then from there, we will charter based on that goals, assuming it gets approved, because we will work hard to make sure that it is a good set of goals. And then we will be able to work underneath the newly chartered package maintenance working group for the actual technical implementation in the future. Does that sound, is everybody pretty much agreement on that? And then we can just call it
Yeah, I
good?
don't even know what the short-term strategy is. Could we just
Yeah,
go
we don't
straight
need to
to?
decide that today. We can do that literally on the package maintenance working group next week or 2 weeks. I can't remember if I think that was a bi-weekly.
I
so
mean,
it
could
might
we
not
just
be next week.
could we just skip that and go straight to the goals doc, or is there something else we need to do?
Well, you said you wanted Corpec removed.
I mean, that was like if this drags out into a month-long thing, like we could just go straight to the goals doc, and if we can get the goals done in a matter of a couple weeks, then sure, then we can proceed. But I don't want this to be like there is harm in if core pack is not part of the eventual solution, there is harm in letting it linger because people will continue to depend on it, and that's not something then we're just increasing the breakage if we do something else. So.
Okay. So yeah, I'm good. Just, I want to be very clear on what our next steps are. So our next steps are, if we can define the goals within the next 2 weeks, we will call that satisfactory to not have to make any more movement on the Corpec decision for now. So we're gonna
Sure.
we're gonna take off the table any changes to the status quo until we get a goals doc within the next 2 weeks. Yep.
Okay.
If you look at the upside of it is sure if we leave the current situation, maybe Copac will get more users, but that's your incentive to get the goals figured out faster.
Okay. Calling it. Folks, it's been fun. It's been fun, but I'm calling it. We're good. See you all in the package maintenance working group. I hope, because probably we scared everybody even more off from this topic. So thank you all. Are we ending today? Joy, do you have some other closing?
Sorry, I think the doc, the notes are missing a lot of things. Like, feel free to update what you said, or I'm pretty sure I didn't catch what Darcy said, something that people agree, but I was kind of distracted, sorry. But just like, you can make changes to the notes. I think I have, Okay. So we'll have, so I think for remote folks, this is ended now. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. So we'll have dinner, we have a dinner table at an Indian restaurant that I put into the detail doc. That's at like 6:30. So if folks are interested in joining, please go and sorry.
My dev team is also. Do you mind if I bring?
Not, I think that's a question for Dan. Yeah.
If they don't, if they don't.
Financially speaking, Bloomberg was going to pay for no collaboration. So this you just need to make sure.
See whether the restaurant company does it.
I guess I can stop the strings now. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Application rumor